That night, right when the journey just started, he stood there and watched her slip down into the night under the glowing moon. The girl told him, straight to his face, that she'd come to repay what he'd done for her. He admitted he'd gone way too far into those mountains, and his greed was the reason it all turned on him. The hero leaned in and demanded if he was okay, and the man screamed that a bear was right behind the guy. He leaped over it like lightning, and it never even got the chance to grab him. The man's face lit up that the boy was there, and he immediately demanded, "So who are you?" The hero nodded like he knew. The bear was bleeding and hurt, and the stranger told him,
"You saved me. Nothing worse than a scratch."
The beast was torn up inside, with broken ribs smashing into its lungs, and that pain snapped it into a full-on frenzy. Meanwhile, the man demanded what it was doing, and the stranger shouted that the bear was a servant of the demon lord and an enemy of all mankind. The protagonist shot back, "Yeah, I'm a monster, but right now, you're my patient." He swung in with his sword technique and boom, he stumbled on something unexpected. He apologized to the animal for his rudeness, then turned away, letting the rest mend on its own. The man screamed that they were going to kill him. He asked the animal if it was okay, and then he nodded like, "Got it, I understand." He leaned in and demanded the guy whether he had any bear eggs. The stranger started shaking his head, fighting the claim with every word. The main character snapped that this was a rare bear with eggs, then raged because the man had stolen its cubs. The man demanded, "So that's why you dragged me into this?" And even with his wounds, the boy just shrugged, saying, "I honestly don't know." The stranger finally admitted he'd figured out the hero stole his eggs, and the hero shot back like, "Hey, those eggs have feelings too." He told you that if you lean in and listen hard enough, you can actually hear the animal's soft, hidden voices. Now he has to slip around this area fast, so he grabs him and drives him straight to the base. The man bragged that the hero's power was unreal. He could heal people, and he truly understood monsters. He introduced himself as Zeke Vitalinari and told everyone he was a veterinarian. The hero unleashed his recovery skill and turned the tide in an instant. Now the cow was thriving, looking perfectly healthy. The owners clasped his hands and told him straight up that they were now owing him big time. The girl leaned in and asked what kind of light that was, and the man grinned back. "That's a hero skill," meaning he was the kind of person you only get in legends. She asked if she'd get the same skills, and the man shut her down, saying he'd already told her she couldn't pull off what he could. She shrugged and said it doesn't matter if she has the skill or not. What matters is her burning drive to help. They told him to quit downplaying himself. He was a real specialist, maybe even better than his father, right? He shot back that he wasn't even in the same league. His father was way superior. And then the hero just blurted that his father had been dead for ages. The girl immediately apologized, and he waved it off, saying it was all in the past anyway. Zeke snapped his head toward him and said, "You saved the cow, yeah, but now I'm scared about something totally new." The stables finally got decent airflow, but that giant load is choking it off, so the whole place has to be cleaned even more often. While in the far corner, that body sits even more cramped and hollow-eyed than last time, and he can't help thinking it needs to be moved somewhere else. The protagonist fired off a question about how the feed was getting split up because he was convinced they'd poured in way too much concentrate. The animals lumbered along, panting like crazy, clearly carrying way too much weight, and every single one of them was following orders handed down from above. So he figured they wanted the herd to get even bigger, but he also knew they wouldn't risk dragging the family into trouble. The man insisted he was dead on. He'd received the order last month, and he'd been too swamped to carry it out. Right then, a voice shouted, calling the hero by name. He told me he was out at the East Ranch right then, running a full routine inspection. The man snapped into a full-on rant at him, insisting that everything, every bit of it, could be done in just 30 minutes. He swore it was the truth, but admitting it cost him way too much energy. The man snapped that the hero always hid behind excuses, and he couldn't wrap his head around why anyone would bother wasting time on them when they were going to be butchered for meat anyway. So he demanded, "Come back fast," and the other guy nodded and agreed. The girl realized the hero was struggling non-stop, and he shrugged like, "I've already gotten used to this." The man ranted that it was awful. Everyone knew how hard he'd worked, yet these rich aristocrats acted like it meant nothing, and the hero wasn't even shocked by how careless they were with animals. Under the new king, the owner said the livestock business had tanked hard. Now there was only one vet left, and they were hanging on by a thread with that hero. But he was fed up, wishing everyone would pack up and take their talent somewhere else, because staying here was just burning time. The main character said he couldn't just abandon everyone. Then the man shot back that even if that was true, he still had to think about himself too. The guy cracked a smile and said he was genuinely thrilled to hear it. He told them, "The minister's furious. Hit the road before you get caught. I'll be back, but for now, make sure everyone's taken care of." Zeke leaned toward his dragon and urged it to head home with him. The animal totally snapped into a frenzy, and the guy just couldn't figure out what the heck had set it off. The hero realized the dragon actually heard his call, and he couldn't hold back his gratitude. He's been picturing a fresh start in a better country, but he can't bring himself to abandon people like them. If you really stop and think about it, where he ended up wasn't anywhere near as bad as it sounded. The main character leans in and interrogates the dragon, demanding to know what really happened. Suddenly, they plunged downward, and the guy snapped, "Hold up! Our capital is across the border, in another country!" Zeke spotted something on the ground and swore it was a dog. She got wounded, and then he turned to the dragon and thanked it for finally noticing her. The animal was battered with cuts and bruises, but nothing looked truly life-threatening. The hero fired off his medical examination skill and zeroed in on the truth fast. When the boy saw the dog's blood speckled with deadly toxins, his stomach dropped. He swore it was mauled by ogres. He told her she'd be fine, because he's the doctor and he's got this. The hero unleashed his dosing skill and turned the tide in an instant. Zeke told her they'd slap an injection in her and she'd feel better instantly, and he begged her, "Don't move." He figured the dog was all well-groomed and buttery soft, not the wild kind at all. Yet he still couldn't believe it managed to hang out in a place like that. Ogres burst into view, and the boy's stomach dropped when he realized they weren't just passing through, they were hunting the dog. He demanded to know why they were hunting her down, when they weren't even planning to eat her. Ogres crashed into him in a frenzy, and the guy had no clue they weren't even hearing a word he said. The hero snapped back and launched the attack. He swore he'd rather not hurt them if there was even a single way to stop it. Still, they came at him with everything, and he snapped, choosing to fight back. The main character slammed down a paralysis skill and froze everything in its tracks. Then he unleashed the sleep skill. These were two medical tricks, and in moments like this, they proved insanely useful. The puppy was safe at last. He started firing off his thanks. Suddenly, she slipped out of his grip like smoke and vanished. He swore it was a monster, and he kept believing he was the one who was talking. He said she was already looking better, waved off the details, and told his dragon to go home. The king leaned in and declared his dismissal right there, cutting him loose like it was final. His eyes went wide. Pure shock hit him like a truck. He snapped into questioning, demanding to know why they fired him in the first place. The king snapped that the prime minister had reported to him, claiming he'd racked up insane expenses, way beyond what he actually needed. The man swore that everything was exactly the same as it was. Livestock are bred and raised only to end up on a plate, and if you throw money just into their medical care instead of facing the reality, you're doing damage, not helping. The Prime Minister claimed the hero proves it's for health and ecology, and if the animals go extinct, he shrugs that a few cubs will be plenty. If they kick him out, they'll slice the waste, slash the unnecessary costs, and pour that money straight into the kingdom's future. The king leaned in and demanded to know if the boy had anything left to say. The hero swallowed his pride and asked, "If that's true, then please forgive him." He told them straight up that livestock farming isn't as simple as the minister claims. Without real care and proper management, productivity will wobble, and nothing will last once diseases start spreading. He also runs the National Army's monster units, and he has to use special methods to tame the Hexen Beast's savage fury, because if he doesn't, people die and the damage will be permanent. The king said most people wouldn't even notice it yet, But a brand new magical tool had just been created, and it could change everything. The minister swore it was a training device. Slap it on, and suddenly pets and magical beasts snap to attention and obey you. He said they were turning animals into mere objects with that kind of thing, and if they keep stomping on their feelings and dignity, a catastrophe will hit one day, no doubt. The Prime Minister started tearing into the protagonist, mocking him to his face. The king snapped that the boy's words were pure foolishness, demanded punishment for every bit of damage he'd caused to the country, and slammed him for his many flaws. Yet when he saw the work he'd done, he grudgingly recognized his competence and chose to be lenient. The king barked an order. He wanted the main character deported, no questions asked. The boy swore he'd done everything he could to stand in for his father, but the second a new king seized the throne, the whole world flipped upside down. The dragon tried to soothe him, and the boy immediately clocked what it was doing. Animals aren't things you toss aside. They're living hearts with real feelings, and they push their friends through the hardest days. The hero swore that victory would be his and his alone. He said it looked absolutely breathtaking. The girl blurted out that she missed him, and right then she realized she still owed him. She stepped forward, flashed a grin, and said, "I'm Tiffany," then told him to call her by the short version of her name. He grabbed her attention and invited her inside his house. He leaned in and asked if she was the puppy he'd rescued, and she nodded, confirming it was her. The hero snapped that her ears and tail made her look like a full-on monster. He swore he wasn't chasing some girl like her. He was rescuing a plain, ordinary puppy. The girl suddenly transformed into a puppy and demanded to know if he finally believed her. He said he'd never heard of any monster that could shapeshift into a human. Then Tiffany shot back, "I'm not a monster." She leaned in and asked if he'd ever heard of the monster gods. He shook his head and admitted he knew nothing. The girl shot back that this monster has been around since ancient times. Its power is on par with the gods, and the one who commands it all is the Divine Beast King. "And she's the Divine Beast King's daughter," she stormed in to invite him. Naradma is a lush world of water and beastly power, ruled by a divine beast king, but his land can't run without his steady care, and that's exactly why he reached out, extending his hand toward a monster he stumbled on along the road. He admitted he couldn't do much, like his hands were tied and his options were gone. If she begs him for help, he'll step up, because he's just been deported and her timing couldn't be more perfect. He told her to wait for him at home. His body burst into a blinding glow, and the girl declared, "The contract is done." The moment someone seals a deal with the divine beast, their hidden power erupts, and they level up with even more raw strength. She told him, "If you've got questions, don't hold back. Ask me." He threw down the words, "All right, time to get ready." The girl flung herself onto his bed, sprawled out like she owned the place. She leaned in and asked straight up if he wanted her to spend the night with him. The hero swore he'd miss it, but the truth was brutal. He couldn't stay in that country any longer. He told them everything would be okay, but he warned the guy to look out for himself. He clocked that the guy had solid companions by his side, so there was zero reason to panic. The hero urged everyone to kick off and push forward. He leaned in and fired a question at the girl. "Did you say anything?" The protagonist said he'd caught a second voice somewhere, then shrugged it off. And right then, they launched into their journey. He told me the trip would eat up 5 whole days, and trust me, it was going to feel like forever. The girl pitched the idea to turn the whole trip into an absolute blast. He fired off the question, "Why's the dragon in such a rage?" They spotted a wounded harpy, battered and bleeding in the air. A savage A-rank monster was already there, and nobody had a clue how it even showed up. Lately, wounded monsters have been piling up everywhere. He strode up to the harpy, inspecting her up close. He unleashed the sleep skill. The girl demanded to know why he was treating her, and he answered with a straight face, "Because I'm a doctor." And honestly, those monsters didn't flip out on their own. The demon's curse shoved them into madness. It's not their fault. The girl insisted this was the guy she'd always known and idolized, and if that was true, the harpy was doomed to fall for him. but he snapped back, telling her to stop with the nonsense. He swore the monsters were cursed and nearly impossible to tame, but somehow he still looked after them inside the kingdom. Breaking the curse took ages, an exhausting, never-ending fight just to finally tear it out. The girl bragged that he crushed a high-ranking monster with ease, and the guy just stared like, wait, I don't even remember having that kind of power. That contract turbocharged his power, and his strength exploded like it was never going to stop. That kid's powers finally skyrocketed. Now he can understand Harpy talk like it's his own language. It was locked into the deal, non-negotiable. The girl insisted it was all because of his raw talent. They closed in on him from both sides and told him, straight to his face, that they liked him. The girl blurted that she was head over heels for him, and he didn't even catch a thing, just for the guy to shrug and call it a misunderstanding. Then it hit him. She wasn't a person at all. She was a monster. He never dreamed the day would actually come when he could sit there and talk to a dragon like it was nothing. They're already here, and the guy snaps that nobody starts spouting nonsense because they've still got a few days before they reach where they're going. The girl grinned and said, "We're fast on our feet, and we made it just in time." The gates burst open, and the creatures inside surged forward to welcome the divine beast. Tiffany burst in and said, "I'm back!" And the moment she did, everyone bombarded her with questions about what was happening out there in the real world. He used to think he had doubts, but now, deep down, he's sure she's a princess. The girl leaned in and bragged that she'd just reaped a massive harvest in the outside world. She dragged in a human doctor like the situation demanded an instant cure. He stepped up, threw his name out like a challenge, and told you he was genuinely thrilled to meet you. They started whispering about him, the benefactor the divine beast had promised, and when no one could even point to his face, the mystery only got worse. He asked if he said something wrong, and Tiffany laughed it off like, "It's totally okay." But you could tell they were both a bit thrown off, since they weren't used to people being that kind. He read that long ago humans hunted beastmen down and drove them straight into a thick, suffocating forest. So when they react like this, it doesn't surprise him one bit. One of the knights led the way straight to the girl, like he already knew exactly where her fate waited. She warned him, right up front, that her reaction might be a lot. And the protagonist snapped back that it was totally normal when someone's a stranger. A little girl came running up, grinned, and told them she had some tasty apples. Then she offered one straight to them. The princess leaned in and asked for some, and the guy immediately admitted it looked downright delicious. She told me they had plenty, and their shop was right that way. Then the guy barked, "Run!" and I sprinted like my life depended on it. The main character said he made things right by apologizing with the sleep skill. He rushed up to Typhus and asked if she was okay. Then the girl smiled and thanked him. The servants started blurting out, panicked, asking if the princess was hurt. She said, "I'm fine." But the knight pressed her. Why was he trying to crush the divine beast? He ordered them to march the hero straight to the castle and warned him that he and his horse should brace for the cruelest punishment of all. The main character realized the horse's hoof was badly stretched and blazing with inflammation. He asked if his hooves were trimmed regularly, and honestly, trotting over cobblestones with them like that felt like he was barefoot on shards of glass. He slammed creation skill into action and made it happen. He told the guy, "I've done you one solid. Just take good care of that horse, and you'll be fine all the way home." And the man promised, "Don't worry, I'll be careful." The protagonist insisted it wasn't on purpose, begged him to cool his rage and spare her, and the girl shot back that she knew he'd never let this happen again. The girl gasped that she never should have sprung out so suddenly, and she immediately apologized. Everyone erupted in gratitude and started showering the main character with thanks. The boy blurted that he couldn't thank the knight enough for saving his horse and saving him too, while the knight admitted he was still reeling, but just as thankful he'd managed to stop the whole disaster. The girl lit up and said she was thrilled they'd finally approved Zika. Tiffany was hoping they'd finally click, get close, and turn into real friends. The girl told him he was a VIP guest, so she demanded they treat him with proper respect. She told him she'd left one of the guest rooms empty, so he wouldn't have to feel awkward or shy. The maid told him, Just ask me if you need anything at all." That guy launched into a heated talk with the dragon, and then, boom, Tiffany's princess status lit a whole new kind of excitement. He admitted that everything blindsided him, and once the princess approved him, the stakes shot up fast. What would the rest of her family think? The hero snarled, "I'm trash at everything, except medicine." The dragon declared that the main character is battle-tested and kind. Anywhere he goes, he'll be welcomed with open arms. Sure, she didn't like that dog, but she couldn't ignore that the dragon saw the same truth. The guy grinned and told her he was stoked she felt that way, and even happier he finally got the chance to talk to her. It was called interracial friendship, and he said it again, voice full of gratitude, like he couldn't believe how lucky he was to have it. The hero's ears caught the cries for help, sharp, desperate, and impossible to ignore. He flicked on his detection skill. 2 rooms down, 2 men slipped through a window, then hauled in a huge bag like it was the prize. The guy snapped, "So, are you kidnappers?" They stopped him and demanded, "Who are you?" Because that stealth skill just spilled the truth. The hero leaned in and said he'd track them down with his own hunting skill. The bandits stared in shock at how deadly good he was. Then he shrugged and said it was just medical training. They finally figured out this was the monster's bone, and it belonged to the thing stalking them. He told her that if they wanted to ask her out, they'd better chill with the overly intense stuff, because going too extreme would only send her running. A bandit lunged at the hero, and right on cue, he unleashed his paralysis skill. He told the bandit, "Don't you say a word, just let the girl walk free, and we'll handle the rest later." He leaned in and demanded to know if she was hurt. The protagonist stepped right in front of the kidnapper and told him, "Now you're going to look at my face." He was packing elite skill, but only a few people could even access it. And a petty thief? No chance. The guy asked her one more time if she was okay, and she gave him a grateful smile, thanking him and saying his name. So he just stood there, stunned, and asked how she even knew it. The girl flat out told him, "I'm your boss." She declared she was the divine queen of beasts, then thanked him with burning gratitude for saving her life. The girl looked him in the eyes and told him, "You're in." She stepped forward, flashed a grin, and declared she was Sophia, the divine queen of beasts. He shot back with his name and immediately apologized for how rude he'd been. Sophia told him to drop the fancy talk and stop sounding so stiff. The girl grinned and said, "We're practically friends already." The queen leaned in and said she had plenty to talk about, then promised to keep it short. She wanted him to be her court's chief physician and serve the country. He was stunned by how high he'd climbed. The chief physician runs the whole medical department, and right now, he's just stormed into them. The servant begged the master to hold up because the queen was about to step into her audience. A total stranger barged in, then blurted an apology to the queen for interrupting her. He wasn't just a doctor. He was the greatest there was, the chief doctor who ruled the entire room. As the court's current chief physician, he said he couldn't just shrug off this mess, because letting the princess's word hand a huge post to a stranger who just arrived was pure madness. Someone told him straight up that his attitude was coming off as rude. The queen heard his words, felt they actually carried weight, and decided they'd seriously consider him for her assistant. Zorua whipped around to the queen and snapped that he couldn't believe someone like that could sit in such a crucial seat, no matter who propped him up, then threw out a chilling thought. Maybe this was a spy planted from another country. The man leaned in and talked up his build and how his center of gravity gave him an edge. The guy leaned in and demanded to see his right hand. The man couldn't figure out why he had to open it at all, and the boy blurted that he was hurt and needed to look at what was inside. The man snapped, refusing on the spot, and claimed he was the head doctor, saying he didn't need anyone's help. He swore it was the exact same cut he carved into that bandit last night, just like he did, scalpel in hand. The knights leaned in, demanding to know which bandits he meant, and the queen snapped that she'd say nothing. Anything else would only stir up confusion. She swore a bandit slipped into her bedroom last night, and pure terror swallowed her whole. Then the main character burst in and rescued her. The knights leaned in and demanded the boy tell them, was Zoroa abandoned? The man said that a scar like that can't prove a damn thing. He said, "That's why I need to know," then busted out the check skill, ordering the guy to draw some blood because the scalpel blood might match. The knight stared in shock because he didn't want to test his own blood. He wanted to try someone else's. The hero snapped that formalities don't matter one bit when you're facing the real bad guys. The girl beamed and told him she was proud. Then he stormed into the castle and straight up exposed the bad guys on the spot. He dropped to his knees and apologized to the queen, begging for her forgiveness. The main characters stared down the court doctors from every corner of the country, and there were tons of them. They handled the medical care for both the people and the livestock. A guy rushed up to the hero, demanded he take charge, and told him to introduce himself on the spot. He stepped up, introduced himself, and declared he'd been named the new chief physician of the yard. The hero admitted that some people might hate the fact he's an outsider, but he vowed to give everything he's got to fit in with the team. If anything's wrong, he tells them to speak up right away, and he'll jump in to help as soon as he hears. He decided that this pathetic greeting deserved something way smarter. But yesterday, life had stolen all his time and left him with nothing. Suddenly, everyone around him lit up with joy and rushed to greet him. He couldn't believe it. Their hospitality was even bigger than the tales about his exploits. Everyone in the city knows exactly how he rescued the princess and the divine queen of beasts because the whole place won't stop talking about it. His predecessor was exactly the same. The heroes leaned in and told him not to stress. "We've got you. We'll do everything we can to back you up." The guy opened his mouth to speak. Then a stranger burst through the door and cut him off mid-sentence. A whole swarm of demonic monsters came barreling toward them. A massive crowd of dragons packed the sky, and every single one of them looked ready to roar. The hero leaned in and demanded, "So, why'd you come here?" They heard he'd vanished, so they tore through the streets searching, only for the dragon to snap, "He won't lift a finger unless his brother comes with him." The boy's eyes went wide when he realized they could talk too, and then he felt it. His power was finally growing. He stayed behind in his homeland, tending those dragons like they were his whole world. He stepped up and asked to take them under his wing because these flying dragons are perfect for riding, and he's certain they'll be a game changer for air travel. The beast man beamed and said it was amazing, and they both nodded along like, "Yep, absolutely." Meanwhile, the king of the protagonist's old homeland cackled like it owned the world. He grilled the minister about his brand new crown, and the man said it'll shine so hard the king's name will echo in every corner of the earth. The king insisted it would rake in way more profit than wasting money on animals, and he was dead certain that the second people laid eyes on her, joy would explode across their faces. Night had already fallen, so they had to move, and the king leaned in, demanding, "Is that flying dragon ready?" But there wasn't a single flying dragon in sight. From the crack of dawn, the knights tore through every corner, hunting them non-stop, because the kings made it crystal clear no flying dragons meant no meeting. With no other option left, he grabbed the horses and the carriage and made his move. But there wasn't a single horse in sight. The instant the main character walked out, nobody bothered to feed the horses, and everyone turned away like they didn't matter anymore. With this condition, you can't possibly chain them to a carriage and hook up a saddle. The minister snapped that if it came to that, they had no choice but to grab a carriage and go. The king seethed at the thought of having to act like a servant, and the minister promised, "Don't worry, I'll come up with something." The man shrugged and blurted that he didn't care. Then they had no choice but to head out. He blurted out an apology to the men for showing up late, and the king snapped back that he'd been dealing with problems of his own. They told him the bulk of the agenda was already settled, then promised they'd write his name at the very end of the minutes. The dragon practically danced with joy over the new house, and the guy swore Sophia had handed them an empty one. It looked huge, like they could cram the whole world inside. He told everyone he'd reached out to Mint. The hero told her he'd written her a letter and launched it into the sky by owl. Even if she can't stand him, she's still his sister, so she'd better figure out what's tearing him apart. That guy decided to kick things off by going straight into cleaning. That girl suddenly felt it, like trouble was sprinting toward her and she couldn't outrun it. She spun toward her brother and told him to hang tight. She'd be there in a sec. The king seethed that this humiliating fiasco had stripped him of all dignity, and he snapped that the main character was to blame for everything. Then the minister stepped in, urging him to cool down. The king turned on the ministers too, furious that they hadn't come up with a solid processor. The minister swore the girl had begged to meet him, said she was a genius they'd hired as their court magician. She's only 15, and she's already graduated from the Academy of Magic with honors, one of those once-in-a-century talents. It's wild. Someone that big and famous actually threw their hat into the ring for an open competition. The king said it all came down to his popularity, so he figured the other countries would finally have no choice but to take notice of their own nations. The king said she showed up almost before she even got the job, and he loved that. But the girl shot back, "You're the one who'll have to do it yourself." The prime minister leaned in and demanded to know what she meant. She warned him, "Don't you dare lay a hand on me. Only my brother is allowed to do that." She said the guy they kicked out of the country wasn't a stranger at all. He was the one who took care of the animals. She only wanted to work in the same place as her brother. If he isn't there, she's got nothing left to do there. The king snapped that for his country to keep its honor, it had to get help. No excuses. The girl spun back to her brother and promised, "We'll see each other soon." Then her eyes locked onto the barrier. The girl stepped up to the knight and demanded he let her pass. She told him, with fire in her voice, that she was desperate to see her brother. The girl unleashed absolute zero magic. Then the main character slammed right in and stopped her. She blurted out that she missed him like crazy, and then he shot back asking why she was there at all when she was still busy studying. The girl leaned in and said, "I already finished school, and I just quit my job as a court magician." The protagonist demanded, "Why did you do it?" while he pushed through everything just to land her a prestigious job. She told him, straight to his face, that all she needed was him. The hero leaned in and asked if the girl's character had really changed. The dragon told everyone her character shifted the moment she finally grew up. Until then, it was pure, wide-eyed innocence. The hero snapped that he'd been sure she hated him. Then she rushed to apologize for not telling him sooner. Once he left the country, she knew one thing for sure. If she didn't tell the truth, no one would ever really understand her again. He blurted out that he loved her too, and her whole face lit up with pure joy. The dragon confessed the guy was head over heels for her. Then her sister snapped back that the main character was crushing on her instead. He told him, "I still have to head home," then quickly apologized for bothering him. He asked his sister if she wanted to come see him, and she said, "Sure, I'll be your guest in that country." The hero lit up and told Sophia he was relieved she agreed, then spun to her and insisted she didn't have to stay in his house. She snapped back that siblings can share one roof without it meaning anything, and then he shot back that she's independent now. Suddenly, the magical light died out, and the girl figured the magic was done for good. The things in front of them weren't monsters at all. Sisters swore it was a shadow puppet skill, and no physical strike, no sleep, no paralysis could touch them. They cornered him and demanded to know what he'd done. Meanwhile, his shadow doll just tanked every hit, laughing off both blows and magic. The main character casually said he just stitched it shut with sewing thread. The stranger bragged that he could conjure infinite shadow puppets, flood the whole room with them, and then wipe them out in a flash. The guy slammed paralysis on him. The man demanded to know how the hero ever caught on when his telepathic voice was perfectly masked. The hero said, "If I'm going to hide inside a doll, I can't let my heartbeat slip out too." He was stuck in his thoughts, trying to figure out who that man really was, while the girl leaned in and promised he'd confess any minute. She unleashed a brutal brainwashing skill, wiping minds in an instant. Now he was her humble servant, ready to answer every question with nothing but the truth. The girl demanded to know why he jumped her brother. The man snapped back that the king and the prime minister had signed the order to have the protagonist killed. These were the same people who chased him out of the country for good. Getting exiled was one thing, but murder was a whole different monster. He couldn't wrap his head around what he'd done wrong. The king demanded, "Can we get her back?" But the Prime Minister shook his head and said it was basically impossible, especially after the way they'd treated the main character. The minister started spouting that he never considered the main character, then admitted they'd have to swallow some concessions if they wanted the magician back. They just have to prove they're ready to take them back. The king snapped that as soon as the chance hit, they'd hire assassins and cut the boy down. The minister shot back that the king was spiraling into dark thinking. Then the man smirked and claimed he'd already sent an assassin, insisting it was a brilliant plan. The minister snapped that the killer was waiting there already, right when they hauled the boy out. The girl said she finally got it. No matter how hard they tried, the one they sent still failed. The king tried to claim it was a mistake, but the man snapped back that they were terrified for her, and for the main character too. The girl snapped that she already knew they were incorrigible, and that they'd finally pay for what they did to her brother. They tried to talk her out of giving them that punishment, but she snapped on the skill Absolute 00 and made it happen. The girl swore, for her brother's sake, she wouldn't take their lives, but if they came back for him again, she'd end them for good. The king snapped, saying he was sick of everything. And right then, the boy grinned and admitted he absolutely loved taking a bath. He built an open-air sauna just as a hobby, and somehow it felt like more than a pastime. Even with a lighter schedule now, fatigue still hits him hard, and his sister swears the water is pure magic. The girl leaned in and told her that she was going to take a bath too. A dragon and a second girl marched up to the main character and froze when they realized the guy was taking a bath. The ice still refused to melt, and the knights swore they'd pulled in every mage, but even high-level magic didn't make it easy. The minister snapped that he wanted no excuses and that they'd be finished by the end of the week, no questions. They got away with no casualties, but everything around them got smashed up, and now he's convinced they'll have to slash a special budget. The king snapped and started cursing everyone in the room. The minister leaned in and told them he had a solid estimate for renovating the castle and everything around it. The king snapped that he had to whip the lesson into the main character, because the guy was already sick. He told her he'd been keeping an eye on the Prime Minister's castle, and if it was his job, he had to act fast. Then he demanded nobody bother him till tomorrow, warning her to set aside 10 days to wrap up the main character. The knights insisted the owl was frozen solid and cut off every other station, while every salamander guard dove straight into hibernation, and the gatekeeper monster started raging, throwing a full tantrum at the cold. The hill right in front of the main gate is a slippery nightmare to climb. Then a water pipe bursts and turns it even worse. The boy slid in beside her and told her they had to find out how that cold would vanish by morning. Then he promised, "I'll be back tomorrow." The main character told the girl he was thinking of giving her a vaccination, ordered her to get it ready, and she thanked him with a grateful smile. He wrapped up his work for the day, and when they praised him for doing it so well, they hit him with the best news. Now he had a date to look forward to. The dragon snapped that the girl was clinging to him too hard, then urged them to toss her away. He was enjoying himself at his usual speed. Like last time, everything had gone still and calm. The girl blurted, "Are you dead?" Then the guy said his name and admitted he had no idea where to find a single elf. The creature jerked in shock, realizing it could actually hear his voice, only for the boy to say it sounded weird, like something didn't quite fit. The dragon snapped that he couldn't believe it. This was the first time since he hatched that a person could actually talk to dragons, while the guy said, "We'll talk later," because he was still bleeding from deep, brutal wounds. The monster demanded, "Can a man heal a dragon?" And the hero shot back, "Yeah, because even a dragon, when it's in trouble, still needs someone to step in and help." The monster nodded like it had spoken the final word, then warned him it would take a while before he could fully regenerate. The guy claimed he was a doctor and that the dragon was bleeding, so that was all the excuse he needed to jump in and help. He finally chose to begin the treatment, then insisted they set up somewhere with a nearby stream. A stranger suddenly stepped in front of him and barked, "The diamond dragon isn't a legend, it's prey." The hero pushed Tiffany to rake in as many leaves as she could from the trees, and he made sure the man told her, loud and clear, not to ignore him. He basically told him, If you're just going to stand there and do nothing, get out. Don't mess with my healing. I'm saving this dragon. The stranger snapped that it was flat out wrong to treat a dragon slayer like a joke. He said the hero had to die. The dragon roared at the hero to sprint. Those stranger's arrows were punching right through his diamond scales. The man couldn't stop wondering who the main character really was, and the guy snapped back. I'm a veterinarian, and I'm going to treat that dragon. The stranger leaned in and swore he was lying. The man swore his arrows would never miss a thing, but the dragon panicked for the hero's life and ordered him to bolt for it. The stranger swore he still remembered the main character's face, and even his name. He fired off transfer magic, but this wasn't some easy run-of-the-mill spell. He bragged that when troublemakers show up, he shuts them down fast. No guilt, no hesitation, not even a twitch of conscience. Now the moment of treatment was here. He grabbed the dragon's attention and demanded it stay perfectly still. The girl shot him a question. So, how's the treatment going? And the guy just leaned back like he had one goal: figure out what they could do next. He figured that once the surface wounds were bandaged up, the dragon's own healing magic would swoop in and finish the job. Even if he taps every skill he has, the healing crawls at a painfully slow pace, because that bandit definitely laced his arrows with some kind of magic. The dragon bragged that he'd hunted 1,000 dragon slayers, but he'd never seen one try to heal, and the hero snapped, "Enough," ordering him to shut up and let the doctors handle the work. The dragon claimed he was using human power to heal him, but it still wasn't enough, so he urged him to try something else. He told everyone he's always straight with his patients, then apologized because this was all he could manage. The dragon warned that he was starving for sacred energy, and once he got it, he'd pour it into the magic until it finally got strong enough. The protagonist blurted out that this was his very first time ever hearing about sacred energy. This is some serious magic. So the dragon leaned in and asked if he could even use healing magic, and the boy snapped back that it's a lot easier to talk about than to actually do. The dragon leaned in and asked if he'd ever mastered that kind of magic. Then the hero snapped back that his real power was helping patients heal on their own. Healing magic hit like a miracle, knocking the Providence out cold, bringing them back to normal life, and he still couldn't even wrap his head around what his sister was trying to tell him. The dragon claimed he could heal because a fierce energy was surging inside him. No accident at all. Just the life he was building, forged from countless healings piling up. The hero demanded, "How do you know all this?" And the dragon smirked, saying it all came from his spirit and the power in his hands. The guy said, "Then go dig through every last bit of your savings." The dragon went wide-eyed and hissed, "Sure, we're flawless, but you tightened it way too early." Dragon Healer's one-of-a-kind power, Hand of God, upgrades, turning him into a true doctor who can heal hundreds of beasts. That guy said the girl sometimes flips and gets straight up scary. He said he was just relieved the dragon was alive, and the monster thanked him for pulling him back and for giving him that strength. The hero shrugged and told him straight up he only did what needed to be done. He told me he had no clue what happened next. All he remembers is the elf bolting into the distance while he stayed behind, tending to the diamond dragon. The girl warned that the country was brutal for Tiffany too, so they had to bury them under ice, and the guy snapped back that she'd completely misunderstood, then admitted he didn't even remember the horned girl. With its evolutionary power roaring through its veins, the dragon shed its true shape and stepped into the world wearing a human body. The guy said the girl was basically talking about that exact thing. Monster evolution is when a creature tears into other ruthless strong monsters and levels up into something far deadlier. As far as this guy knew, his dragon wouldn't dare touch a single monster. The girl said monsters like her don't just eat, they drain your magical power through food, and when that huge burst of magic floods their bodies, evolution kicks in on the spot. That's the proof. His magical power doesn't just help him, it triggers evolution. The hero demanded, "Why do I have magic?" And the girl shot back, "Because you're bound by a contract with Tiffany." By striking a pact with the divine beast, he unleashes divine energy, and then that run-in with the dragon yesterday supercharged it even further. Turns out the clan can borrow that monster power and make it their own. So when the boy mixes the might of a god with the ferocity of a dragon, he doesn't just level up, he gets dragged through a wild existential evolution. And of course, everything around him starts changing too. In the end, he didn't just learn healing magic, he became the most powerful healer alive, wielding a power that felt straight from a god. Healing magic is pure miracle, one touch that mends everything, restoring people, animals, and even magical monsters without mercy. He's convinced every meeting with everyone led straight to this inevitable outcome. So once the time comes, he'll use her however he pleases. She told everyone she might wear a human face now, but her brain stayed pure lizard. Then she added that her body was built for the hunt. The girls started bickering like crazy, and the guy stepped in fast, begging them to calm down. The queen laughed that it was pure entertainment to watch, and the protagonist snapped back that Typhus wasn't acting weird at all. The girl claimed that the divine beasts share a spiritual bond with heaven, and that her link is so powerful it can only mean God's will flowed through her. Turns out Tiffany meant every word literally. None of it was just some metaphor. After getting hit with all that info, he still wasn't sure he got it all, but he refused to let it change the way he wanted to live. The girl burst into his room and shouted, "Good morning!" like she couldn't believe he'd finally woken up. He pushed for troops like right this second, so they could charge in and tear the land apart. The man insisted, straight from his own eyes, that the beastmen weren't the ones to blame. The one they already crushed was seething over that insult, and he vowed to wipe them out completely. Elkis roared for them to come out, then promised to wipe their country clean, denouncing them as nothing but bad people. One villager asked the elf, "So you're really here just to see the sights, huh?" And the chief elf burst out laughing at him. Right then, Elkis yanked out his sword, swung, and cut his opponent's head clean off, then erupted in loud laughter, mocking them as total losers and claiming he crushed their whole country in just half a day. The beastman's voice cut in from behind him, demanding to know what he'd just done, and the elf spun around fast, insisting he didn't get how his neck was still intact. Then the boy pushed the question again. At that exact moment, one of the elves pounced on him and sneered that he was a pathetic little bug, then warned he'd strike again. The beastman snapped his defenses up, but no blow landed because someone else slammed into the elf first. The elf attacker was torn apart into brutal pieces, and Elkis stared in horror because he never saw it coming. One of his subordinates suddenly shouted his name. "The light swallowed the village! We can't go any farther!" And Elkis instantly knew it was magic, so he bellowed the main character's name out loud. Elkis told them they'd already hardened the village for his arrival, then shot them a warning and asked, "Was that really smart?" The beastman snapped back right away, demanding what he meant. "The guy told me that Master Zeke showed up here yesterday for a routine checkup, and he reminded me of the Queen's words. Whoever the protagonist heals gets blessed with light for a little while." The elves blurted that they couldn't bust through that shield and would have to fall back, but Elkis cut them off, barking that a Dragon Slayer hero doesn't quit that easily. Then he summoned the demon Baphomet. He declared they'd hack straight through next, using his SSS-ranked demonic beast to smash the devil's barrier and everything in its path. And right when he said it, something snagged his attention. Then his eyes snapped wide with stunned disbelief. Elkis fumed with rage, then surged forward without a second thought. His subordinates shouted his name, but he didn't even flinch, and the man warned that the bad guy was way stronger than he'd ever imagined. He said he'd need to head back and cook up a plan, but right then he burst into coughing. Elkis blurted, shocked, what was happening, and the next second a monster stood right in front of him, greeting him by that long-eared nickname. Elkis smirked and admitted the other day's lizard wasn't finished off, then leaned in and asked if the monster was truly hunting a fight, only for the thing to grin back and say he'd nailed the plan the moment he saw Zeke's power. He said it looked like the other guy had gotten lucky with that evil person. Then he offered a rematch, straight away, and the guy nodded like, yeah, just like that. Elka snapped his arm forward and swore he'd crush him flat like a pancake. Then he yanked his magic bow into place until, right then and there, his hands got cut off. The man spun around and erupted into screams because his hands were sprawled on the ground, while the monster growled that he couldn't hold the bow anymore and demanded, "So how are you going to pierce my scales now?" Elkis burst into a laugh and told him he could even cast healing magic. These wounds meant nothing. Then he sprang to his feet and cried out. Tension coiled tight in his chest. He thrust his magic at his hands to heal them, but nothing budged. So all he could do was pray he still had enough time to do a little more. When he finally understood he wasn't getting anywhere, he snapped and started yelling about why magic wouldn't work. Then the monster cut in and told him healing miracles only happen through divine power. He also claimed Elkis launched an attack on Zeke, the messenger of God, so losing his blessing felt inevitable. With tears blazing in his eyes, Elkis erupted into loud shouts. "I don't understand a thing!" Then demanded he talk to him face to face, even calling him a lizard. The man stared as 4 enormous dragons loomed ahead, and right then, the lizard blurted that it was basically the same as he just stepped on God's tail. Elkis shot him a smug smile, then rushed to beg for forgiveness, claiming he never meant to kill Zeke, while pleading with him like his life depended on it. Right then, the hero was glued to the newspaper as it screamed that a band of elves had been hit by some mysterious disaster, and he immediately figured he'd have to order tougher patrols, until Tiffany stepped in and told him to stop and rest. Zeke snapped that he doesn't work, he just reads reports, but the girl hit back, "That counts too," snatched them away and told him to rest anyway, even as his anger simmered and he couldn't argue her down. The protagonist chatted with his friend, who ranted that his secretary's criticism of his workouts had cost him a whole week's salary, and the worst part? He'd been bored out of his mind from day one. She laughed so hard she cried, whispering that she never imagined Zeke would ever say words like that, and honestly, it's a relief he finally has someone to steer him. She insisted she was right, and he couldn't help but think he'd love a wife like her. Then the girl whipped out a book on how to control a man and started reading it, page by page, like it was the real secret to winning. Tiffany said that a cave had just been discovered on the border, so she pushed all of them to check it out, and before long, they stumbled into a dungeon, basically a huge, twisting labyrinth. Down in the underground, the magical element leaks into the air, and it's also where the real magical power comes from. The deeper it sinks, the more it molds into a core, turning into the underground itself. Dungeons are like living nightmares. No body, but a deadly hunger to swallow people whole. They spit out monsters, snap traps shut, and twist evil magic into the dark. And if you don't stop them, they'll break out and invade the outside world. They have no clue why they're even here. But today, adventurers from every corner of the globe are charging deep underground to wipe out a brand new threat that's just reared its head. At that moment, Elizabeth threw herself into the fight. She landed hit after hit, and the monster finally crumpled to the ground, bleeding out, leaving her with no enemies left. She whipped around to her team and demanded a status update, and they said everything was good, until they revealed the uncle was covering for his niece. The man bragged that being a tank was his job, and the girl snapped back that he had no business showing off like that. He spun toward the leader and admitted he'd messed up while disarming the trap, and she shot back that it wasn't just on him. Still, everything was going to be okay. The little girl said the dungeon reeked with a disgusting, suffocating vibe, but it still wasn't even the worst it could be. And the boy warned that the cave was crawling with S-class monsters, urging them to retreat, only to get shut down. Elizabeth warned them, if they went against the royal command, they'd shatter the prime minister's trust, and that would spell disaster for their party. She barked, "We're switching! I'll take point! You cover the rear!" And the little girl snapped back, "Be careful! I can feel the magic waking up!" Suddenly, a mountain of monsters closed in on them, and the blonde blurted, "Are more monsters really showing up?" The other guys snapped back that if it kept going, they'd have to restart from scratch, while the leader shouted, "Act!" Right at that moment, in a different corner of the dungeon, the protagonist was with his team, and Tiffany was grinning as they rolled along. She couldn't stop laughing, saying it was the funniest thing ever. Zeke groaned that everything was a disaster, and his nerves started buzzing. But she grinned and said it sounded like the most fun place ever, with tons of rides, like an amusement park. So Tushan shot back, "Are we really sure this cave is safe?" The girl swore you could drop into this lava, get smashed, and still be totally fine, and Chi-chan reluctantly went along with her. The main character said he couldn't stop wondering how all of it works. But right then, Tiffany spotted monsters lurking there, real as anything, and Zeke snapped, asking if it's somehow stupid to be terrified of them. The monster in front of them spun around and snarled for them to die, then swung a massive hammer at Tiffany, pinning her to the ground like she was nothing. Chi-chan blurted out a scream right away, and Zeke shot back that it was fine since it was an attraction. Then Tiffany burst into laughter and said he'd freaked her out. Every soul in the cave went silent, stunned. Suddenly, she stared at the bull and snapped that he was wounded. So the main character blurted out what happened because it wasn't some fancy makeup trick at all. Zeke stormed up, pressed his fingers to the wound, and introduced himself as a doctor who could set things right in a blink. Then begged him to let him check it, slapped on the healing skill, and the monster instantly froze in pure shock at what it saw. After the exam, the main character cast a healing spell over his whole body, aiming to wipe out every last sickness in the monster, and Tiffany lit up like, "That's so cool." Right then, the bull leaned in and asked, "So, is your name really Zeke?" The monster dropped to one knee and thanked him for waking him up. Now it begs for their help because the curse has trapped countless people. While all that chaos raged elsewhere in the dungeon, the uncle jerked his niece out of the way of the monster's strike. Then the second Elizabeth saw it, she snapped, demanding to know what he was doing. Right then, he crumpled to the floor, blood seeping from his wounds. The uncle kept insisting he was a tank and wouldn't let her get hurt, while the other tried to reassure him. Then his breathing started to fail, and blood kept pouring everywhere. The leader said there was a sign across the dungeon that pointed straight to the core, and the little girl insisted they had to take that way. Elizabeth snapped, asking how much magic was left to unleash their attack. Then the blonde girl said they only had 20% remaining, while the other warned it would jump to 30% only if they drained every last recovery item. The leader snapped that the moment she signaled, they should unleash everything at the front line, and the dark-haired man shot back that if they just opened fire on them, those enemies would scatter and dodge. Then Elizabeth snapped that all they had to do was ditch them. She'd stall them while they hauled ass in the opposite direction, scattering the enemies to pieces, and she'd sprint like her life depended on it. Together, they'd smash the core. The blonde demanded, "Do you really think this is real?" And the leader snapped back that it was her mess for not sizing up the dungeon's true danger, so she'd better own it. Then the Dark Ones chimed in. She never planned the explosion properly. He told her, "If you can clear the dungeon with that kind of strategy, you'll sail through." Then grilled her with a few questions until he pointed out she didn't even know the core attribute, and her face lit up with anger and embarrassment. The Dark One declared with a grin that they'd pull it off anyway, while the blonde one swore they'd all crawl back alive. The leader's cheeks flared as he blurted out a shaky thank you. Right then, the room detonated with a violent blast. Boom! The blonde insisted they'd already covered the explosion, and Elizabeth snapped back, "That wasn't me." It turned out the main character had come with his crew, and when he mentioned the place was packed, the leader demanded to know who they were. So Zeke just shrugged and said he was a doctor passing through, and everyone instantly stared in shock. Zeke stared at the monster and said they'd been through hell, only for it to grin and claim the curse had landed. But the karmic payback hadn't come yet. Then Zeke snapped back that the truth had already moved on. Now it was just a waiting game, and strength would decide when it finally hit. Then the protagonist shut his eyes, activated his return skill, and boom! It worked like a charm on both monsters and people. The leader stared at her hand. Those wounds were gone like they'd never existed, and when she turned, Uncle's face looked perfectly healthy too, every scratch wiped clean. His niece burst into instant joy. Then everyone froze when they realized even the monsters had come back, every last one, and the leader turned to the main character, thanked him, and declared he was worthy to be their master. He blurted that it was way too embarrassing, begged them to stop acting like that, and kept shaking his hands in front of him. Then the leader and her whole team froze, staring in shock, and demanded, "Wait, are you really the Demon Lord?" After a while, Zeke finally showed up at the estate. He greeted Elizabeth, leaned in, and asked if every formality was finished. Elizabeth smiled and nodded, then told him they'd already become residents of Naragma. The main character admitted he was shocked to find out they were both from the same city, and the girl snapped back that she felt the same. Then she revealed she was surprised too, saying he was a veterinary and she'd heard plenty about him. Zeke flashed a grin and admitted they were a little famous, and Elizabeth immediately shot back. People were whispering that they'd vanished for good, and the thought of what the kingdom lost when he left was almost too painful to picture. He shot his gaze away, clearly rattled, and even his nerves started to show. Then he blurted that it was ages ago, and she pressed him. "So tell me, is it true about the king and the prime minister?" The girl snapped back that they were the prime minister's crew, and the king had just issued a direct order, so they were marching to this dungeon no matter what. They'd been through too much already, and they were done. Elizabeth bragged that they were the main crew of S-Class Twilight Dragon Country. Then they revealed themselves as the prime minister's private army, and this time they got shoved into a brutal dungeon with zero time to prepare. The protagonist told them, "From our side, that dungeon feels like pure hell." And the moment he said it, he couldn't help thinking, maybe it really was a God's blessing that they didn't get crushed by that suffering. Elizabeth swore it really happened. Everyone showed up smiling, and then Zeke stepped up, apologized, and admitted they didn't exactly treat them kindly. At that exact moment, the girl teased him about whether this was some kind of date, and the guy flashed a grin, saying he only swung by to see her and would be back in the infirmary soon. Right then, the bull monster hurried up and apologized for the delay. The protagonist spun toward him, flashed a grin, and said he was happy he was doing so well. Then the monster growled that without him, none of this would have ever happened. Elizabeth nodded along, saying that the guy wiped the curse off every monster in that dungeon and even hired them all. Then she went, "Can you believe how much heart this country has?" And the bull grinned and told her they should thank Sophia for everything. The girl whipped her head toward the bull, tears in her eyes, and blurted that in the dungeon she'd told him everything, until the monster cut in, grinning, like it was no big deal, insisting that nothing terrible had happened and that it's something everyone goes through. The main character dropped the line, "Today's enemy is tomorrow's friend," and Elizabeth nodded along, like it didn't matter what they'd been through before, only what they were facing right now. The girl insisted that humans, beastmen, and even monsters can laugh side by side and live as one. So he forged that dream and called it theirs. It felt incredible, and that's why they packed up and moved here for it. The protagonist leaned in and asked if it was really true, and he swore it had to be the delicious food. Then Elizabeth, mouth stuffed to the brim, blurted that the food here was absolutely magnificent. Right then, her own team called her out, and she hurried over to Zeke, swallowed her pride, and apologized, saying she had to leave because a dinner party was waiting. Zeke just blinked because she'd already eaten so much. Then he spotted the scar along her cheek, and he promised he'd set it right the next time he saw her, only for the girl to smile and say it was an old scar and she was totally fine. She brushed her fingers over it and said it wasn't just an object, it was a living memory of everyone she'd met, her own memories, and to her it felt like a medal. He stared at her with a jolt of surprise, then told her this scar wasn't something that needed fixing, because he'd finally understood the whole truth. Zeke asked what kind of memories those were, and the leader snapped back that it was a delicate question he should be ashamed of. Then the guy immediately stumbled into non-stop apologies, insisting he didn't mean to offend her, and the girl just laughed and said, "I'm joking." Elizabeth whipped her head toward him, winked, and promised that once they got closer, she'd finally spill the secret. Zeke grinned and said he got it, then swore he'd make every effort. At the same time, Chi-Chang crouched in the bushes, spying on their meeting, and the bull stared at her in stunned confusion because something felt off. While far away, some mystery stranger pressed the diamond dragon and demanded, "So the guy's really Zeke, huh?" The dragon lit up at his request, saying he could help, and the other guy promised, "I'll stop by." But when the dragon demanded he rally the rest, he got a flat answer, "No need." The diamond dragon begged the master to hold on, but the master stormed off to track down the main character and told his dear child to stay strong and wait a little longer. The king barked that the S-class Twilight Dragon Party had fled the country, then dismissed it as pure nonsense. Until the guild member shrugged and said, "I don't know the details. We just let them go for personal reasons." The man erupted in loud complaints, claiming they'd pushed him onto some noble mission and dared to bail. Then the other guy snapped back, "Calm down," and addressed him like, "My Majesty." The Prime Minister demanded to know what it meant that they'd fled the country, and the guild member shot back, "Wait, I didn't even realize we were in your service, so how am I supposed to know?" The king fumed, demanding what they should do next, and the Prime Minister shot back that he'd only uncovered resignations from a handful of people, yet nobody knew why. The king bellowed that he didn't need a rotten reputation, and then demanded, right away, that the group that had bolted from him be replaced with someone, tearing into the lot as total incompetence. Then a guild member snapped around to face him and demanded answers, why it looked like he had zero clue what was going on in the country. The man bristled with outrage and fired back, "So what are you actually saying?" The employee made it clear, this wasn't just Elizabeth and her friends fleeing the country. Lately, they've been getting flooded with requests to handle runaway magical beasts, pets gone wild, and all sorts of absurd chaos. And in the end, it's the government that's on the hook for keeping things secure, so they step in and demand the king tell them exactly what the government plans to do. When the king and the prime minister heard about the scattered animals, they instantly thought of the main character. Then the king erupted, swearing he couldn't believe Zeke was somehow behind it, and the employee had to tell them, "Calm down." Then the men shoved them out and barked, "If you're gonna make noise, do it outside." The king demanded how they dared to be that rude. After all, they just kicked him in the leg. But the king wouldn't drop the real question. "Now tell me about the snow." The prime minister whipped around toward the king the second he spotted something terrifying overhead, and the king insisted it couldn't get any worse, until he turned around and saw a colossal dragon blazing across the sky. A guild member screamed that it was a dragon, then demanded why it was hanging around the city center and what the patrols were even doing about it. The ice dragon stared them down and said the human town where the vet lives is way harder to track than she expected, because she's hunting a man named Zeke, the famous veterinarian. The guild member snapped, asking if she was threatening him, and the dragon stared right at them like, somehow, she got it all, because nobody could ever understand the dragon's words, and now she was left wondering what she was supposed to do next. The king roared at the crowd, demanding to know why they were just standing there, then ordered them to destroy it. But the employees snapped back, saying they hadn't even done a thing yet, so there was no need to poke the beast, and the prime minister cut in with a chilling verdict. It was already too late. Then the guild members yanked the prime minister by his clothes and snapped, "We're collecting our own taxes!" The king stared at them and instantly decided they were nothing but dead weight. Then a voice snapped his name. "Hey, you're in trouble!" And when he spun around, he saw a whole squad of mercenaries closing in. It turns out it wasn't just some random crew. It was a pack of mercenaries, hungry like wolves, led by the thug boss Lamab, and somehow they still fight like veterans who've already learned how to crush old dragons. The prime minister marched up to the king and demanded where he'd snagged the mercenaries, and the king snapped back that he'd hired them himself because the prime minister himself was useless. Then his subordinate blurted out that letting scoundrels like that stay here would spell disaster for the castle, and he tried to steer the talk to the reward, but the king cut him off fast, saying it wasn't his problem at all, it was the prime minister's job. Then the king snapped his gaze to Lamobu, grinned like this was destiny, and declared they'd arrived at the perfect moment. Then he barked an order to wipe out those dragons immediately. Then the mercenary's boss barked that the man should kneel, so the king pressed him again, and the guy snapped back, "You want him to do it? When you ask for something, you follow etiquette rules." He called it pure nonsense. Right after that, Limobi and his crew spun on their heels and headed off, swearing they needed warmer lands because a cold wave hit him out of nowhere until the king shouted, "Hold up!" and told them to wait. The leader, eyes glazed with boredom, demanded to the king what he even wanted from them when he couldn't bring himself to kneel. Then rage started to rise in the king's chest, and he snapped his gaze around the room. Then the king dropped to both knees, bowing his head to the floor and begging for help to face the dragon, while Lambob burst into instant laughter until he was crying. He burst into loud laughter and yelled at everyone to stare at this incredible king like it was a masterpiece, while the other kept kneeling, trembling all over, furious and mortified at once. Lambob said it cracked him up, then spun to his team and declared, "All right, we're going to wipe out monsters now." They all nodded without hesitation, and right then, that dragon had absolutely no idea someone was about to come for him. He figured everyone was buzzing about her words, like they finally got it. Then right then, she got slammed and attacked. Lamab snapped around to his team and demanded they step in, or he'd take the fight solo and tear him down by himself. The ice dragon thought her rage was about to explode, until the mercenaries snapped into action, burning through every charge they had to wring out every last reward they could from him. Every mercenary surged in together, roaring, "Die!" as they slammed into the dragon, and the king instantly threw up his fists in pure joy, claiming they'd succeeded. Lambob burst out laughing, talking up Bingo like it was the greatest thing ever. Then, right on cue, a barrier snapped up in front of him, set there by the main character. Lambob screamed for everyone to stop, and the moment the guy showed up, everyone instantly recognized him. The king roared his name, and the ice dragon snapped her gaze on him like, "Finally, I found Zeke." Zeke spun toward her and said he'd heard all about her from the Diamond Dragon. Lamab snapped at Zeke to get out of his way, then fired back, "So you're with the animals?" Zeke refused to pick a side. He just couldn't stand to leave the wounded to suffer, and they called him a good man. The guy swung his weapon at the protagonist, but he didn't even flinch. He just smashed it to bits. Lambov stared in shock and blurted out, "You really destroyed a ball of the hardest Ori Halcon? With your bare hands?" The ice dragon let out a brutal groan, and the protagonist's heart sank. She knew she was in deep trouble, so they had to move now, fast. Then Zeke snapped into action and unleashed his paralysis skill. Every single mercenary, every would-be attacker, and even the dragon's targets just froze in place. When he saw it, he realized he wasn't just healing faster. His magic was leveling up, too. The king scanned the room and demanded, "Zeke, did you do it?" The prime minister, still stunned, blurted, "Yes." And the king just stood there, shocked, saying, "I had no clue you were that strong." Mint snapped, telling her brother she was ready. Then he grinned and said, "Good, we'll grab the ice dragon and get transported." Her sister jumped in, "No, we'll teleport you straight to the kingdom of the beastmen." The ice dragon leaned in and asked to do it. The king snapped, "Zeke!" and praised him for saving the country when it was desperate, promising they'd set aside the battle and hand him his position back. The main character didn't even flinch. He just brushed it off as the king told everyone he was a damn dragon lover and ignored him to the bone. Zeke started tearing into the ice dragon's secrets, and he warned them. The egg was wedged in tight, and she couldn't push it out. One wrong move, and this whole thing turns deadly fast. He pressed her, demanding to know why she'd come to the city looking like that, because if things were timed wrong, he might not even make it in time. The ice dragon stayed stone cold, said nothing. Then suddenly he learned she'd been worried sick about it. It was Elrond, the Dragon King. Zeke blurted, asking if that's the same as the Ice Dragon King, and Tiffany greeted him like he was the Divine Dragon King. Elrond leaned in and told her they hadn't seen each other in ages, then crowned her as the princess of the Divine Beast, while Mint turned to Zeke and insisted it was the ultimate god of all dragons. He smirked and told the kid, "Everything's true. I'm Elrond, the Great Winged King," beaming because this human child finally recognized him, and Zeke couldn't help but ask how someone that powerful ended up right here. Elrond snapped back that the ice dragon was his 7th wife, and he'd sensed something was off with her lately, but he had no idea she was carrying a child. Then he turned to her and demanded to know why she'd kept it hidden. Mint snapped her gaze to the dragoness and asked if she was truly terrified of all this cutthroat struggle for the throne. And the dragoness nodded without hesitation. The ice dragon warned her that giving birth before the queen would ignite a scandal, so she grabbed the baby and vanished into hiding. The king admitted it was real. Tell her to deliver, and their baby would be his first child. Yet he wasn't like other kings, because no matter what came, he'd be overjoyed just to see their little one. and the dragoness's cheeks flamed with a deep, helpless blush. Elrond snapped that if she ever slipped away from him, even for a heartbeat, he'd make her love him harder than ever, because the baby would be there too, of course. The ice dragon immediately thanked him, like that promise was pure magic. The protagonist rushed over and apologized for cutting into their emotional talk, and the air turned heavy fast, because this was serious, and the king said he understood. Elrond snapped his gaze to Zeke and asked if he could save the ice dragon. Zeke swore he would save her, but then he warned that it wasn't that simple. He's terrified that natural childbirth won't happen, so in his mind, the only choice left is cutting in. Then Elrond leaned in and demanded, "Do you honestly think a man has to touch the dragon's body?" And the answer came back loud and clear. Yes, because it's what the mother and the child need. The king broke into a grin and granted the permission without even trying, because his aura said everything for him. Then he demanded Zeke keep his two most beloved dragons, and Zeke shot back, "Don't have to tell me twice." Then they dropped the dragon onto the ground, belly up, and the protagonist kicked his magic into gear right before yanking out a scalpel and laying out every last medical supply. Then, with his team and the beastmen at his side, they helped the ice dragon bring the young into the world, until, after a while, he carefully pulled the egg from her body and declared, "It worked." Tiffany snapped that it was done. Elrond shot back, asking if the baby was safe, and Zeke grinned and swore it was. He could feel those living, pulsing wings beating inside the shell. Then a crack ripped across the egg. Cha-chan burst out that it was incredible. The dragon was moments from being born, so the man barked at him to hang on tight and go meet him, and the main character was left reeling from the whole wild thing unfolding in front of his eyes. Ice Dragon grilled him about it, and Mint snapped, "Don't sweat it. Dragons don't imprint." Then he pressed, "So that's really true?" A few moments later, the egg finally split wide open, and out popped a tiny dragon, so small and adorable that everyone just melted. The dragon stared him down with those tiny beady eyes, and Zeke froze. Then it nudged his lips with its nose. Everyone around her stared in stunned silence. Chi-Chen couldn't even get the words out. When she asked why they were acting like this, Tiffany blurted that she wanted a chance too, and Zeke snapped back that they needed to stop meddling with the dragon. Elrond flashed a smile and praised the main character's work, then thanked him, only for the guy to wave it off and say it was all good, like this was just how things usually go. The king said, "Humility isn't the same as respect, because a dragon's birth doesn't belong to any ordinary creature." And then he hit them with more truth. Mind-blowing medicine, monstrous magical power, and years of experience reading every kind of chi. Elrond grinned at him and declared that only the main character could pull this off, and the words lit a spark of gratitude in him. Yet Elrond's praise left him squirming in embarrassment. The king told him to pack up and go right now, Zeke snapped, asking what happened to his wife and child. The man admitted he'd begged for forgiveness, but he still got shoved into leaving her with him for a while. Elrond snapped his gaze away, his face going stone cold, and said he had someone he needed to worry about. Inside the palace, the king burst into angry shouting over the damage, and then he slammed down an order for a full report. The prime minister admitted that cold weather had crashed people's plans, accidents, and ruined crops, likely because of dragons. But Zeke's moves kept it from turning into a catastrophe, and that statement left the man reeling. The king snapped, "What does this mean? Are you really thanking me while you back that awful doctor?" And the subordinate just shrugged, saying he was only reporting the facts. Right then, a voice nobody expected snapped into the conversation, calling it a nightmare and swearing the main character couldn't possibly survive in a place like that. Every man whirled toward the sound, and there it was, the dragon god. The king snapped that this was his private chambers and demanded to know who'd let him in. Then the prime minister scratched his head and said he looked like someone he'd seen before. Elrond, no way, right? Steps in as a king, introduces himself, and declares he's the god of dragons, the great winged ruler who commands every last dragon. Right away, the prime minister pressed him again. "Are you really the king? Really a god?" And made it crystal clear he wasn't joking when he said he was all dragons. and the king snapped to Elrond, demanding what he'd forgotten by coming here. The man claimed that the ice dragon that tore through these lands earlier was his wife, and even though she never wanted to hurt a soul, she still had to endure the chaos and pain of the attack. He stared them down and demanded the culprit, then shot, "Do you know him?" And the men instantly turned ghost white, begging him to explain it again. The Prime Minister swore he'd seen it all. Hungering wolves, that's what they were, at least from what he remembered, because a gang with that name had already struck the dragon. The king first hauled him up, then, after thinking it over, nodded and backed every word, saying, "Yeah, that's the truth." Elrond whipped around to Lamobu and snapped that the king had spoken up. Then he pointed out the beat-up state of the guy and demanded what was going on, because the man admitted it was him, and insisted it was done on the king's orders. The moment he was hit with it, he shot back hard, claiming he knew nothing, insisting the Prime Minister did it, and swearing he had zero part in the attack. The one who'd been named stared at him, shocked by his words. Elrond snapped his eyes shut, irritation blazing, and declared, "That's enough. Retribution is on the way, and they're going to pay for every crime they've thrown at my people." Rage erupted in the dragon god's chest. He roared like thunder, his body warped mid-breath, and then he snapped into his dragon form, ripping apart the king's castle piece by piece. Elrond warned them that this time he'd chalk it up as an accident and walk away, but next time he'd unleash every last ounce of the dragon's power to wipe them out, and they'd better remember it. The king and the prime minister were sprawled on the ground, barely able to move, and then the Khan showed up, asking if he'd truly missed the best part of all. The king snapped up his greeting and called him a hero. That little dragon blared the main character's name and swooped straight at him. Then he grinned and called her Shia. He scooped her up, she greeted him with a smile, and he told her, "I'm home." Then he leaned in and asked, "Were you a good girl today?" And she beamed yes, until she added there was one catch, then turned around. Chichan stood nearby, looking anything but okay, and when Zeke asked what was happening, she snapped back that everything was fine, except for one nightmare. Even tiny little things were crawling into the main character's house. Zeke admitted there was nothing he could do, and when Elrond and the Ice Dragon grilled him about it, he caved, only for the girl to snap back that if someone asked, he could always refuse. Chichan blurted that she'd lived with the main guy her whole life, until her sister came back, and now this new girl shows up, and even the dragon cuts in, saying it's about Shia. The girl snapped around and demanded what she meant, and the dragon answered without hesitation, "I'm not new. My name is Shay, and Zeke gave it to me." She swore it was true. She only learned it because of the sky-blue scales. Then he fired back, asking what she didn't like about it, and Chachan snapped, "It has nothing to do with that. So why did you even name someone else's kid?" Mint told him dragons treat family like sacred gold, and Zeke letting Elrond name the child lit up his gratitude like fire, while Zeke only shrugged and said there was nothing he could do about it. The protagonist said he figured they'd get along. Then the world around him snapped into darkness, with no familiar faces in sight, and he demanded who was there, only for the stranger to fire back. What did he want? A girl suddenly stepped in front of him, smiled, and told him to stop panicking. She had one question only. She introduced herself as Elena and promised she'd ask him again what he wanted. The main character admitted it felt brutal to say, "I'm just trying to help everyone I can," then shot her a look and asked, "Wait, are you not asking me about that?" The girl told him that humans, monsters, gods, beasts, and even dragons, whole different worlds that should never cross paths, somehow gathered around him, laughed together, and actually trusted one another. Then she pushed him with the question, "So, how is that even possible?" Zeke answered, "I just lend a hand to whoever can help me. Everything else shows up on its own." Then grinned that his destiny sits in his own hands, powered by the gods, and that every person close to him is there because of what he's done. So she pressed him, "Then what, for you, makes one person different from another?" The protagonists grinned at her and told her they'd never need to split them apart. People, animals, all the same. End of story. Elena didn't answer. And then His name was shouted. Zeke tossed out an apology and asked what he'd been told, but Qiqian snapped, asking what was wrong with him. Then the guy admitted he'd been stuck in his own head and apologized again. And right then, Mint cut in and called him out. The main character burst out into the street, and there they were, 3 dragons streaking through the sky straight at him. He snapped, "What happened?" And one of them growled that he couldn't stay behind because something was wrong and he had to come with them. Near the western gate, the guards snapped that nobody had told them when they were supposed to arrive from the border, so they'd have to sit tight and wait for word. McCann shot back. Wait for confirmation. So what does that even mean? He snapped that this whole mess was just bureaucratic roadblocks, and in moments like this, you don't stall, you improvise. Then he fired back, asking if they truly didn't recognize him, and after they hesitated, he hit them with the truth. He's the hero of McCann. One guard swore this was the best the kingdom of Getten Yuga could throw at them, but another guard wondered why he was really here. Then the soldiers riding in with the hero said the hero had arrived, so the gates had to swing open. McCann snapped and swung at the talking guard from his own team, demanding to know what the hell he was even spouting. Rage boiled in his veins as the hero snapped, "Don't push me any further with your clueless nonsense." The Beastman guards stared at him like he'd snapped, certain no one like him belonged in their country. So McCann spun around and told them to relax. Let him in, because he'd handle everything from there. While a guard tried to stop him cold, the hero ripped straight through the gate and tore out a massive hole on the spot. The guards insisted those gates were built from indestructible stone, patrolled all around the perimeter, yet Macon just laughed and said that was exactly how his strength worked. The hero demanded they make way for him, but the guards shut him down. No entry, not allowed by the rules. And as McCann realized they were blocking him, his fury kept building, the kind that makes you snap at anything. Right then, he shot his hand up, declared, "We're good, let's play now," and reminded them they'd already taken the first step, so none of this was his fault, while a massive black sphere started forming above him. McCann pointed out those weren't just any houses. They were the guards' homes, right behind them, and if he torched the whole village, they'd probably sing a different tune. The men stared at him, totally thrown off by what he'd said. The hero snapped into full-blown madness and screamed that they needed to see just how much magic had already piled up, because when he finally let it loose, he wouldn't just torch their homes, he'd blow the entire country to pieces. Right then, the main character burst into view in front of him, dropped to one knee, and stared up at McCann like, "So you're really the hero everyone talks about?" Zeke said he'd heard rumors from the kingdom, and it sounded like they'd come for him. So McCann stared at his own hands as his magic was suddenly gone, wondering if this whole thing was just a trap meant to distract him. Macon stared at the protagonist and asked, "Are you Zeke?" Then shot back that the king sent him to drag him home, before he delivered some insanely funny begging to make him go. He grinned and said he was glad Zeke came himself, because he had zero interest in breathing in this nasty nest after realizing he'd left his deodorant at home. Then the main character shot back that he should just go home. McCann fired the question at him again with a wild grin, like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard, and he clearly wasn't ready for that answer. Zeke told McCann, "I should head home. Getta's no longer my place. I'm the Rogma's guy, the land of animals, and I'm not walking away." McCann just shrugged and admitted, plain as day, that he doesn't care what Zeke says. Right then, a magic circle snapped into place around the guy, blasting the other guards backward. He gulped and admitted he'd been terrified when Zeke put him on the spot, then begged him to act like a real adult and actually listen. One of his teammates said the king demanded Zeke alive. Then he nodded and said, "Yeah, I know," and hit back. "So what's the deal with this order? If I just rip out his eye and hand it back, would that really be enough?" McCann demanded the holy sword come out, then shouted that this was the power of heroes, and finally turned to Zeke and told him to die. Right then, the protagonist fired off his paralysis skill. No one escaped it, not a single soul, and the Mackin instantly erupted into a blood-curdling scream. The shockwave ripped him off his feet and slammed him into the rocks. Then his guard rushed over and asked if he was fine, and he snapped, "Shut your mouth! Back off, or you'll be dead!" Then Macon finally clocked it. He'd locked in paralysis, and it was the absolute lowest rank skill. Still, did he really just stab his holy sword through with that? He refused to believe this was real. This had to be a bluff. Zeke looked like he was just pretending to cast another skill. Then he slammed off something stronger, blasting him as a treacherous man. With a hard, serious stare, the main character warned him, "If you don't want to get hurt, then turn around and go home." Makan burst into laughter, said it looked like he wanted to try, then chained in like a true battle-hardened warrior blessed by the goddess, asking if he really understood what he'd been given. He claimed he could shut down every scrap of magic regular people throw around. Once his barrier snaps up, any attribute spell just bounces off. And while Zeke's scrambling, he's quietly stocking up enough magic power to rip Zeke apart. Right then, the protagonist snapped his hand into an ice stream. McCann stared after the electric shock and demanded if that was ice and snow magic. He said the kid was smart, but it sounded like he barely registered what he'd just seen. While McCann was still talking, Zeke streaked past him and smashed him with a brutal hit. McCann choked on it, then stared back with pure rage, demanding, "What did you just do?" McCann snapped that the misty ice alchemy was impossible. Even as the protagonist swore it wasn't some goddess-made trick, it was a divine skill he only unlocked through his bond with the dragon, and it just wrecked the goddess's abilities. Right after that, the guy crumpled to the ground, with zero strength left. He only hacked and coughed, gasping for breath. Then Shi-chan said Zeke's control of fog and ice alchemy had surged up by 32. Beastman guards demanded, "Is McCann dead?" And the protagonist shot back, "I don't think so. He's one of the strongest heroes in the world." Zeke shouted to the men the kid had brought along, ordering them to take him and swear he'd never come back. And they nodded along, taking his command. After a while, the main character ended up in Queen Sophia's castle, burst in and told her everything, plus that he'd sent McCann away, yet the girl just stayed silent. The main character started to sweat with worry, asking if he'd messed up somehow, only for the girl to hesitate and admit, right there, that yes, he definitely had. Sophia said the news hadn't reached them yet, but the hero had already slipped into their country as a messenger, and no matter what, everyone could tell Getanai Yuga had come trouble their way. Zeke just sounded crushed, saying he was so sorry. The guards bowed through their apology and snapped that they struck first. Then the protagonist stepped in to defend them, saying the only guilt was that they missed their mission, not that they meant harm, and they'd take any punishment. Zeke froze, stunned by what they said. Sophia insisted they had zero plans to punish anyone, but the king refused to yield, because if the word hit the world that they kidnapped someone huge like Zeke, it would spark a full-blown war between the human nations. The main character swore he'd come here by his own choice, and the girl snapped that if he couldn't prove it to the whole world, then it was just talk. Then the guards leaned in and told her to speak. One of them said, "Give Zeke a knighthood." If everyone saw he wasn't just some pawn but a real important citizen, they'd struggle to lay a hand on him, and the girl nodded, saying, "Yeah, that's a brilliant idea." Zeke shot a question, so they were seriously talking about knighthood? If he was going to be a nobleman, he was already more than thankful for the head doctor gig, right? Tiffany burst out laughing. "No way, that's not happening." She promised they'd turn him into a royal right then. The main character snapped her name, and Sophia fired back, "What a brilliant idea!" He kept calling her name again, and with that, night crashed down. The main character swore he truly got his knighthood, and in that country everyone was pure nonsense, from Parliament all the way to the square, until the whole crowd agreed on it, unanimously. Right then, his sister burst onto the balcony just to find him, and she told him they loved him so much, so he snapped her name out instantly. Min told him nobody likes it when the star of the show vanishes mid-party. Then he shrugged and said, "Now that the ceremony's done, it's time to go all in on the night." Min said she understood it all, and on the balcony, Elron and Tiffany were right there too. He snapped his head toward his sister and asked if she wanted to drink, then warned her the place only let you drink if you were at least 15. She paused, waited for a second, and finally said she'd take a sip. Then he handed her the glass. Mint stared at the glass, took one tiny sip, and boom, her face flared red as she blurted out that it tasted amazing. The protagonist nodded along, and the girl quickly slid the glass back into his hands, saying she was still a kid, even if her heart was craving a whole world of experiences. Zeke flashed a sweet smile and basically warned, "There are things you really shouldn't do." She clutched her chest, ready to ask what he meant, until they spotted something. Mint tried to speak up and ask what was going on, and the protagonist snapped that it was starting again. Then he spun toward Elaine, who was suddenly right there beside them. Zeke admitted he didn't have the full details, but he figured she wasn't an enemy, and Elena swore she understood everything, meaning Mint was on their side too. Then she warned them they'd have to hear her out. The girl bursts in and tells him, "I'm here for a favor. Today, I need your help, because I'm counting on you as a veterinarian." She yanked off her hood, snapped that she needed help to cure her father, the Demon Lord. The very next day, a roaring crowd packed outside the king's castle, screaming for change and demanding to know what on earth was happening to the country. A deadly plague tore through the state farms, sending food prices into the sky, and the guards snapped into a full-on frenzy, with security completely spiraling out of control. On top of that, public facilities have been left abandoned since there just aren't enough people left to fix up the castle. The Prime Minister bolted straight into the king's office, yelling that they had to act right now before this situation spiraled out of control. The man scanned the room, locked eyes with the main guy, and demanded to know what the heck was going on here. One of the guards snapped that it was all the hero McCann's fault. McCann just exploded with a loud curse and smashed up everything he grabbed. McCann stared straight ahead and swore he'd never forgive that bad man. He'd stay on his heels, close in, and force him to finally see the truth. The guard swore the hero had been this way ever since he came back, and the king tried to hold him down, but nothing stuck. Just like you're seeing right now, the last guard lay crumpled on the floor, knocked out cold. Tan called the hero by name and ordered him to stop, claiming he was scaring people, then snapped back after hearing the lecture about restraint by roaring, "Shut up and don't tell me what to do." Tan warned them, even with the king watching, their one job was still simple. Take down the Demon Lord. Don't lose sight of it. While the heroes just burst out laughing at him. McCann pressed him on why he called it a group, and he snapped back that it was nothing but a bunch of weak people trying to rebuild, because without him, every single one of them would have been dead already. Then one of the girls screamed that they'd finally tracked down the main character, and McCann snapped, "Where is he?" Right after that, he declared he'd kill Zeke on the spot. Turns out, Zeke was hiding inside the Demon Lord's castle. Then McCann flashed a grin like he'd been waiting for this moment, and vowed it was perfect timing because he was about to hand them all a bloodbath. Night rolled in, and the protagonist with Elena finally reached the castle, and when the girl asked if he was scared about arriving without an escort, he just shook his head and said he didn't think it was a trap. Zeke admitted the only thing that scared him was the sudden wave of heroes, so Mint and the rest got left in the dust. The protagonist leaned in and asked Elena if she was truly certain everything would be fine, because she'd just brought a human straight to the demon's stronghold, and when doubt hit, she insisted it was all for her father. At that exact moment, agony ripped through her. She crumpled to the floor and screamed at the top of her lungs, and Zeke jolted with fear, demanding to know what happened. As he closed in on her, dread crawled up his spine. Was this a curse taking aim at him? Right then, a voice cut through the air, screaming that the princess never should have done this. That mystery man snapped that it wasn't right to blurt out such crude noise in the open, then leaned in and asked what she thought, only for the girl to call him Jammer. The man demanded to know why their princess dragged some puny nobody into their lands. The protagonist stared him down and said he was sorry for how he was. Then Zeke Vitalinari stepped forward and introduced himself. He was a veterinarian. Jammer snapped his face into a huge grin and blurted that he was a doctor, like that was supposed to settle everything. He told the man he'd have to come report to him because he was stepping in as prime minister in place of the Sikh ruler, and then he leaned in and warned him, "Don't you dare pull anything stupid." Jammer leaned in and asked Delaney if she felt any better. She shot back that she was fine, more or less. The girl told him she begged Zeke to check her father, since the whole castle couldn't cure him, They needed an outside opinion. So the man of men just chuckled and said, "Everything's fine." Then Jammer flashed that sly grin again and pressed him with, "So what's the point? It won't help, right?" The protagonist shot him a suspicious look. After a while, Zeke and Elena finally slipped into the Demon Lord's chambers. Then Elena tugged him toward the bed and asked him to examine her father. He thought he finally understood her, but then the truth hit. Turns out, even demons don't stay loyal all the way. Based on Jammer's speech, he seemed like the kind of conservative guy who definitely sounded like he might have caused the girl's curse. So if that was true, then the Demon Lord's illness had to be his doing too. When the protagonist stared down the Demon Lord's body, he realized the curse was the same one, just way weaker than Elena's. Zeke snapped that the curse was brutal, one vicious power chewing through the man's entire body like a spiderweb, and if they tried to fix it the usual way, he'd literally come apart. The girl stared in shock, while the man behind them just laughed. The protagonists were convinced they were demons, because everything about them felt wrong for humans, beasts, or monsters, and the way magic flowed through their bodies was totally unfamiliar, like they'd stumbled into a realm nobody had ever seen. Jammer demanded to know what happened, and then, right after that, he said the guy looked sick, like, wasn't he supposed to treat him and call him a human doctor? The protagonist blew him off, stared at his own hand, and replayed the power that had healed the dragon in his head. Then he spun to the girl and demanded, "Do you believe me?" And she shot back, "Yes, I do." Zeke thrust his hands forward and unleashed God's hand. Elena's jaw dropped at how brutal and powerful it was, and Jamar immediately blurted, "So that's really healing magic?" He laughed and said it was wild how clueless they were, because that kind of magic was poison to demons. So what happens when it's thrown at a helpless demon lord? Right then, the girl's father snapped his eyes open. The demon lord dropped onto the bed and demanded, "Where am I?" Elena burst into tears of joy and shouted for her father, while Jammer stood there, completely stunned by what was unfolding. The girl bolted straight to her father, and he snapped back, asking if it was truly her. Jammer went completely wide-eyed at what was happening. Elena told her father, "You slept too long, but a human doctor healed you." Then her father turned to Zeke and thanked him for saving him, and Zeke just shrugged. "Yeah, it's my job." The girl demanded to know why it helped, and Jammer chimed in fast, saying he had healing magic and that it was deadly poisonous to demons. He shot back that he didn't know the full answer, but one thing was certain, he'd succeed. His divine powers kept leveling up with every step, and meeting that girl only fueled his burning wish and drove even more strength into his body. Jimmer snapped that it was pure nonsense. There's no way this could be real, because not even a mortal can shatter that curse. The demon lord snapped his gaze to him and said, "Yeah, it was me. I did it." Like only he could have ever come up with something that vicious. Jammer let out a wicked laugh, saying he'd honestly prayed this whole time that he'd stay his puppet. His grin was pure scheming. Right then, the whole situation snapped into chaos. He declared that there was no saving anyone and promised he'd tear through every single person who dared stand in his way. Gemmer told him that even if the Lord's standing strong right now, he'll never take the win in this busted state, and he's not waiting long for the stomach shocks to finish crushing them for good. The Lord declared the room itself was his magic, and you could tell he'd planned every move with terrifying care. Elena then leaned in and asked, "Is this where we praise you? So what happens next?" Jammer kept laughing like crazy, saying he never expected to whip out the composite magical beast, but no choice came up. And right then, the protagonist slammed foggy ice alchemy into the scene. Zeke swung once and cleaved the beast in a single strike. Then Jammer's jaw dropped as he demanded, "Wait, did a human really wipe out that S-class demon monster that was bred to kill the demon lord?" Just then, the protagonist scooped the girl into his arms, spun toward the man, and swore it was time to give her what she'd earned. But Jammer snapped, said it was too soon, then called the Demon Lord's army and ordered them to slaughter everyone. The Demon Lord demanded, "Is your whole army under your control?" Elena's nerves shot up, but the protagonist didn't even blink. He just unleashed his paralysis skill. Right after that, every demon just froze solid, like the world snapped shut. Jammer couldn't believe it and blurted, "Is this really paralysis?" Then, without warning, he vanished. Rage lit up the protagonist's chest. Teleportation crystals were back again. First Zeroa, then the elf, and now this mess. It felt like someone bought them in bulk, and the demon lord finally snapped back that the man himself had handed them out. The man blurted that he couldn't believe he'd actually wiped out their army and labeled him a human doctor, while Zeke stared in shock, stunned that humanity's sworn enemy, the Lord of Demons, could talk with such chilling calm. Elena admitted she had no clue what people thought of him, but she swore her father had always been an incredible ruler and parent. Then the man shrugged and said, "So, yeah, it makes total sense he got that awful reputation." The Lord and the protagonist blurted out the same thing at once, the curse of the demon lord. Then the protagonist snapped, "Every monster in this world is cursed. It drives them insane, and they tear into people." The demon lord admitted it was true, swore this mess wasn't his fault, offered to check things himself, then bared his body and pointed to the demon crest on his chest. The Lord warned that this was the founder's curse, and the protagonist repeated it back word for word, stuck on what it meant. He said Belial, the first young demon, the one who kicked off the whole bloodline, left that mark behind, and now it shows up on every demon king after him, and it will never fade. As long as it's there, their entire line will stay under its grip. Zeke swore he understood it all, but the man warned that this curse feeds the ruler's power and locks in the ideals Belial imagined. So even if years drag on, demons will still be nothing more than enemies of humanity. Elena snapped that not every demon craved pointless bloodshed, and her father was hunting for a way to keep living right when Jammer seized the moment. The main character told them, "If you don't mind, I'll help break the curse." The Lord demanded proof he could truly break the curse chained to king after king for generations, and he shot back, "There's no guarantee." The main characters swore that his power was handed to him to save people in trouble, so there's no way he's walking away while they're hurting. Zeke stared him down, and the demon lord leaned in, praising his unshakable will, promising he'd trust him, then demanded he break the curse chain. He swore he'd even trade his own life so the next generation wouldn't have to suffer this curse. Then the demon lord dropped to his knees before him, and the protagonist lifted his hand like he was stopping a god, while inside his mind, he realized it wasn't just any demon lord. It was the original one. He started wondering who would come out stronger, because he'd been throwing out promises he couldn't possibly keep, yet somehow the key to everything landed in his hands anyway. The demon lord stared at the chaos unfolding before him, and real surprise hit. Elena snapped that the main character's power wasn't just there, it was reacting to the curse mark. Zeke shut his eyes and swore to himself that this time he could heal everyone. Demon lords, even the gods. The demon lord snapped his head around, and there it was, Zeke's magic flooding the whole castle like a living curse. The girl didn't waste a second and shouted to him right away. Tiffany leaned in and listened as Sophia explained it all. How the main character got the title of Savior from the Demon King, the evolution of existence, the Doctor of Salvation, and somehow he's safe and sound. The demon lord stared at his own body and declared the primordial curse was finally gone. And it didn't even cross his mind that it wasn't just him trapped inside that curse. It had swallowed the whole castle, so there was no way it could be lifted so easily. He said he was blown away that the main character actually knew it, called him a master, then the last word came back fast. "Nah, it's not me. It's all the gods." The demon lord snapped that even a power like modesty is pointless without the right way to use it. Then he said he was glad it was him, and Zeke nearly died of embarrassment. The man boasted that it was all because of him that the demon race could finally take the next step, so Elena rushed in to join him, overflowing with gratitude, practically beaming because she'd brought him here. He told the girl to shut her eyes for a second, and she kept asking, "What?" at first. Then she blushed hard, still obeying as she puckered her lips like she was about to kiss him. Zeke just brushed a finger through her hair, called it done, and straight up apologized. He'd forgotten to erase the curse, but now it was finally gone for good. Elin pressed him again, and the moment his words hit, she blushed hard, then rushed to thank him for helping her. The Demon Lord said she couldn't hide the odd look on her face, so the girl shot a warning at her father not to tease her, and then the protagonist blurted, "Wait, what are we even talking about?" Right then, screams ripped through the air from the side. Some unknown person was yelling at the Demon Lord to show himself, calling him a bad person, and Zeke instantly knew that voice. Everyone spilled onto the balcony to stare at the chaos. Then, McCann, the hero, yelled that he'd wipe them all out. Then they all lined up, shoulder to shoulder, facing each other. McCann leaned in and told Zick, "I saw what you found in New Friends." And Zick fired back, "So you're saying I'm even more stupid than you thought?" Elena snapped that they were so careless they only stripped the lock's safety gear to lure the protagonist in. Then the protagonist shrugged, saying everything was fine. Zeke whipped around to the hero and demanded, "Are you really here to take down the Demon Lord?" And Makan shot back, "Don't worry." The protagonist declared that he'd broken the curse driving monsters and demons wild, so no more fighting was needed. Then McCann gasped and asked him again, stunned. Zeke pressed him on what he couldn't see, then made it clear the Demon Lord wasn't letting chaos rule. He wanted demons to live in peace, not run wild, and McCann hit him with the question again. The hero flat out said he doesn't care if the ruler's good or evil. He's a hero, and he doesn't need any excuse to end that man. And he also swore they'd have to kill Zick. McCann spit it out like a death sentence. Because Zick would finally pay for the crimes that wrecked his honor, and no matter how many days of torture drag on, he still won't forgive him. The protagonist unleashed his paralysis skill, but Tan blitzed in front of him and snapped up the ecliptic barrier. Zeke's jaw dropped. This time, a barrier snapped into place in front of him, and his power refused to work. And right then, the enemy started lining up to move. The dark-haired man unleashed the heavenly demon palm, and the ground under the protagonist, the Demon Lord and his daughter, cracked open, dropping them straight down. He cradled Elena in his arms and told her, just like he'd always hoped, heroes really are different from everyone else. McCann burst out laughing and said, "Last time it was Zeke who caught me off guard, but this time, I'm not giving him a single opening." The hero bellowed at his whole team to crush the enemies, no mercy, make them pay, and wipe every last one out. His teammates unleashed a brutal mix of moves: Purgatory Fire Circle, the Typhoon Vacuum Blade, and the Heavenly Thunder Slashing Sword. At the very end, the 10 destruction spells got unleashed, and the Demon Lord praised it for its pinpoint power and perfect coordination, saying it was pure brilliance. Elena shouted Zeke's name, and Zeke replied that it wasn't that big of a deal. Then the main character's hand erupted in a glowing light, and the girl spun toward him and shouted his name again, so he figured this wasn't just a moment, it was a brand new power. Then boom! An Udar smashed down right where the Demon Lord, his daughter, and the boy were standing. And McCann snapped, "What did you really destroy?" But Tan only shook his head and denied it. When the smoke finally vanished, two silhouettes stood there. Our hero and the Demon Lord, clutching his daughter to his chest while the rivals erupted in outrage, yelling that he was totally unharmed. Then McCann snapped, asking what the Demon Lord was gripping in his hand. The moment the hero spotted the holy sword in his own hands, he demanded answers, so the main character just shook his head and admitted he had no clue how any of it happened. The Demon Lord leaned in and declared the sword was packed with the hero's power, and it was exactly what he needed. No questions asked, because only a Demon Lord could be trusted to vouch for it. McCann exploded into a barrage of swears, saying he didn't care whether it was a bluff or a straight-up lie. This world didn't need two heroes. Tan nodded, dead serious. There was only one. The guy swore those were the right words. Then, right after he said them, something caught him off guard. Tan dropped to one knee in front of the main character, introduced himself, and swore that his life was now in the main character's hands. McCann snapped, "What kind of trash are you even saying?" And then the guy barged in like, "Don't work for this man. He's the only one you should ever follow." Tan wheeled on the boy, called him by name, and demanded, "Can you summon your holy sword?" McCann said, "Yeah, of course I can. I'm brave. But when the guy tried anyway, it just didn't work. The hero started to demand answers, snapped and cursed up a storm, then turned on the sword and asked why it wouldn't reply. When Tang finally called him out by name, the man snapped the truth at him. He wasn't a hero anymore, and maybe even the goddess had walked away from him. Then the demon lord and his daughter went wide-eyed in shock. Right then, the king exploded with rage, shoved down canned food, spat curses, and demanded to know why his life had to feel this miserable. One of his guards stepped in and told him to bite his tongue until the crowd finally cleared out of the castle. The man snarled that everyone was stupid, forgetting their duty to him, treating him like trash, until the people's protests spiraled into a full-blown riot and the king got chased out of the castle. The man snapped to his guard and demanded, "Where's the Prime Minister?" And the guard shook his head, saying he hadn't seen him and the poor guy was probably out there fighting a riot. The king exploded into furious screaming, cursing everyone as useless until he spotted a glowing magic seal. Then he demanded to know what it was. The guard explained it was a teleportation spell and warned him to be careful. When the man spotted strangers showing up out of nowhere, he screamed at the top of his lungs, and the Lord admitted he was sorry, saying he never should have miscalculated the coordinates. The king leaned in for a closer look, then gasped in disbelief. Was that really Zeke? The guard beside him froze the same way. The man demanded what the main character was doing here and what he wanted, then snapped that all of this was because of him, before asking those guys what they were doing to him. Zeke shut his eyes and let out a tired sigh, because talking to this guy felt impossible. And then Tan leaned in and asked if he could finally explain everything. The latter said Zeke didn't just take the hero title from McCann, he earned it after McCann stormed the Demon Lord's side and talked him down. The Demon Lord revealed his true identity, then bragged that with Zeke's power, he finally had zero reason to clash with humans, and on behalf of every demon, he bowed his head and apologized for everything he'd ever done. The king went pale with shock. He demanded to know what was happening, then muttered that this guy was weirdly quiet, even for a demon lord. Then the man snapped his gaze to the protagonist and praised him as a real man of action because he didn't just beat the demon lord, he dragged him in alive. Zeke tried to lay out everything about the demons, but the king wouldn't even hear him, so Zeke snapped his attention to the guards and ordered them to get ready for the public execution they'd been expecting, and the guy pushed for answers all over again. The king declared that once he won over the people, he'd be remembered forever as the ruler who brought peace to the world. Then Zeke shot back, "What do you mean?" The man told him, "Don't fret. If you're the one they execute, the honor of the executioner is yours." Then the main character burst into a roar. "The Demon Lord isn't evil. He's been cursed. I lifted that curse, so the monsters won't hunt people anymore." The Demon Lord flashed a grin and swore it was all fine. Lifting the curse didn't erase what already happened, and that small price landed as one life. The king promised that after the execution, they'd start hunting the other monsters next, easy to wipe them out as they grew, and once the job was done, they'd even build a stadium so everyone could cheer while they hunted them, calling it the perfect release for the people. At that exact moment, the main character clenched his fist so hard his knuckles went white, rage burning in his chest as he shouted straight at the king. He spun around and saw Zeke gripping the hero's holy sword, blazing like it owned the sky. Then, right there, the blade slashed straight through his clothes. The king snapped out, shouting at the protagonist for what he was doing, and the protagonist fired back that he'd already made his choice. Zeke promised he'd forge a whole country where monsters could finally feel safe, and the man grilled him again, right there. The king demanded, "Are you out of your mind?" And the protagonist snapped back, "No, everything's decided. Monsters can live in peace, just like people and animals." Zeke shot back that most of them wrecked lives, some even ended in death, so yeah, he gets why that fury is boiling. So they have to build a whole country where the ones who've been targeted can finally live in peace, and then, step by step, force the world to see the truth. They're just like everyone else. The king snapped and asked what kind of nonsense he was spewing, then said he couldn't handle it all by himself, and the main character shot back, "You're not alone." Above them, The sky blazed with dragons, and Sophia shouted that they'd help him. Elrond insisted each one would pitch in, and Zeke nearly fell apart when the whole sky rushed to his rescue. Mint said the divine queen of beasts, the divine king of dragons, and the lord of demons, and somehow, even right now, the big one has allies piled up. But Mint's sure that later, the numbers won't stop growing. The king grilled him, flat out asking if he was trying to conquer the world, then snapped that he better not say he was plotting to become a demon lord. The main character spun toward him with a grin and said he wasn't buying into any of that, but if he had to step into that role, he'd do it. The demon lord promised that if he was going to take the throne, things would feel way less brutal for everyone. He even believed it would make his reign sound less terrifying to the people. Tiffany told them Zeke doesn't just rise, he earns the title of Demon Lord, an evolution of the very Savior's existence. The girl told him she'd had a gut warning ever since she first met him in that forest, like fate had already stamped this moment. So he followed the path he trusted, and she swore she'd always be there, backing him up and helping him through it. Ji-chun pressed her. "What are you even thinking? Do you really feel like my wife when you're the one standing right by Zeke?" Min snapped back that they were both wrong, saying her brother loved her more than anyone. But Chi-chun shot back that they weren't even in the same league. The demon lord burst into laughter and told Zeke to look after his daughter too, and the hero nodded back with a grin, while the other girls went completely wide-eyed at his words. Sophia pressed him. "Do you finally get what you're in?" And all he could do was stand there, watching everything unfold from the sideline. The moment the king heard it, his nerves snapped. Then he demanded, "Do you really think anyone's going to follow a bunch of nobodies, of God knows who?" The man warned that everyone would band together against them, but Sophia just smiled and said they'd already tipped off the nearby countries. Then Elrond chimed in that they'd watched their dragons in action and swore they'd cooperate. The king couldn't crack a single answer to those words, and Sophia sighed, saying it was a shame they couldn't get him on their side. Then they all bade him farewell. The man froze, spun to the guard, and demanded what he was supposed to do, only for the guard to admit he had no clue, when suddenly someone shouted out to the king. The king whipped around and spotted yet another guard, then barked, "What do you need?" And the guard swallowed hard and said he had information. The townspeople who'd seized the castle demanded the monarchy be wiped out, and Parliament said, "Fine." So a revolution exploded across the kingdom, leaving it nearly in ruins. And then the king turned to him again and demanded an answer about what really happened. Nerves shattered through him as he blurted, "I don't get it," then demanded, "What are you even talking about?" A guard bowed his head and apologized, saying he had a family and couldn't go any farther. Then another guard snapped, "Wait!" because he was going to escort him himself. The king snapped to attention and demanded they stay, begging them not to leave him. Then he sank to the ground, completely lost, like he had no clue what came next. A voice called his name. "Prime Minister." The king snapped to attention, demanded if it was truly him, and shot back where he'd been. The king snapped and demanded to know how long this man had been flying. Was this some sick joke? And you could see the total shock tearing through his eyes. The prime minister let out a smug chuckle and said he'd be more useful than him. Then the man crumpled to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. The king froze, completely stunned. The latter fired off a question to the stranger, and then his eyes went wide, because it was the very girl who'd shouted the protagonist's name. The Beastman Kingdom's castle is thriving. On this bright, crystal-clear day, sunlight pours over the massive tree towering in the center, and the whole place feels peaceful, almost like the air itself is breathing in harmony. Young Tiffany sinks into a seat at the table and scribbles on paper with fierce focus, all alone in a fragrant room packed with flowers and towering bookcases crammed with books, until the only thing you can hear is the soft clink of tea as it drifts beside her and her pen races across the page. She slams the thick textbook shut with a thunderous bang, beams like it's over for good, and throws her hands up in triumph. She finally beat her homework. She snapped into her fluffy, soft form in an instant, burst out of her room, zoomed through her mother's throne room, then zipped around the throne and all the advisors, beaming as she declared she was going to visit Zeke. And her mother called after. Queen Sophia snaps at her daughter. then the girl has already vanished through the window to meet Zeke, so you immediately promise her.
Don't worry, I'll make sure you behave perfectly.
As T zoomed through the sky towards Zeke's new home, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Zeke had sworn he'd build his own country where everyone lived side by side. And somehow, bit by bit, he'd actually kept that promise. Thanks to Zeke's divine gift, he flipped the Demon Lord's ruined land, turning it fertile and kickstarting a full-on bloom. Zeke tore into the work, threw up fresh buildings, and uncovered new resources that powered the growth of his state. Fresh beasts and demons, finally snapping out of it, swarm into a desperate search for refuge from every corner of the world. In no time at all, his castle exploded into one of the continent's biggest cities, roaring with life, packed with soldiers, and turned into a thriving fortress. Hanging in the sky, T watches the whole city thrive because Zeke keeps pushing, and then she bursts into happy giggles. As she streaked deeper into the city, T kept gushing about how awesome Zeke was and how much she admired him, while the Demon Mord's old castle looked nothing like before, brighter, cleaner, and no longer a hideout of darkness, now proudly called Vitalinary, Zeke's family name. Princess Tiffany swooped into the throne room and started greeting everyone before they even had a chance to settle in. As she soared toward the throne, she prayed Zeke would be there, and when she finally got the chance to meet him, joy hit her like lightning. She can't believe it. There's nobody on the throne, and nobody's even in the room, until Dorothy sneaks up from behind and blurts, "Princess!" The secretary clocked that the princess had shown up again to see the new Demon Lord, and when T asked Dorothy how everything was going, the bunny girl grinned, saying they were doing great and that Zeke and the others had been nothing but kind to her. Dorothy tells T that Zeke already stormed off to handle his Demon Lord duties, so she's stuck here by herself. Then T points out Zeke is back at work, and Dorothy grins because he's not just lounging on his throne, he's off doing real, important stuff. A brand new, gorgeous, sprawling cattle farm has sprung up right in the suburbs. Zeke kneels by the vehicle and with his special assessment skill runs a full inspection like it's just another day. Right behind him, his old farmer buddy, once moved to the city under Zeke's wing, beamed as he watched his favorite vet at work, while Zeke, hands deep in the inspection, declared the cow was perfectly fine. The vet checks the cow and declares she's perfectly healthy. Then the farmer hears it and practically bursts with joy. He couldn't shake the worry that the cattle's health would tank after the move, so he pulled Zeke in to check them. Then he grinned, because Zeke was officially the new Demon Lord. Zeke snapped to attention, swallowed his pride, and told the farmer that no matter how folks label him a hero or a ruler, he'll never see himself that way. With a small, knowing smile, he brushed off all those fancy titles like they were nothing, because at the end of the day, he was just a plain old veterinarian doing his job. The farmer cringed in embarrassment, then burst into laughter, and just as it happened, his daughter slipped out from behind him and greeted the doctor with pure, joyful excitement. She and the cat sprinted up to him, thrust the jar of milk into his hands, and begged the good doctor to taste the dairy from their cows, while she beamed with joy, finally getting her chance to thank him. The doctor grinned, took the jar, and drank every last drop of milk down to the very bottom. He let out a happy breath, grinning as he announced, "This milk is insanely delicious. Every sip's been seasoned with pure love." The girl lit up with pure joy because the doctor actually praised the milk from their farm. The brand new Demon Lord leaned in, stroked her head with a grin, and thanked her with all his heart, while she lit up and told him that she and her father had busted their butts to make the milk perfect. Right then, his sister and a steaming pot of tea burst onto the farm. He heard them yelling his name, and embarrassment hit him like a truck. He chuckled awkwardly, a small grin betraying him the moment the girls caught his act, and the farmer rolled with the joke, then welcomed him right back home. With the sky blazing behind her, Tiffany snapped that Zeke couldn't pull it off. While they bounced along on Chichan's mount, Princess T leaned in and told Zeke, "You work too much. If you're going to skip out, then do it properly." The man confessed that he hadn't seen his close friend Chi in her old form in ages, and Chi just smiled back, swearing she'd always be his rock no matter what shape she wore. So the protagonist finally thanked Chi-chan for being there for him. Then he whipped around to Mint, who was slumped behind him, muttering to herself, and demanded, "What happened?" The young man grinned when he realized Mint was working as a librarian, then leaned in and asked why she looked so furious. The girl swallowed her disappointment and confessed that she'd been dreaming of more time with her brother since they both worked in the same castle until his fieldwork kept him chained to the fields and dumped the paperwork on her shoulders. And then she looked down and said she'd put in for a transfer. He cut her off and fired back. "Your work matters. Kids are counting on you, and they're the future of this country. And so am I, along with everyone else." The girl clung to his words about kids in the future, repeating them softly like they'd hit her straight in the heart. Mint blushed, and that mix-up spiraled as her brother started imagining, then daydreaming, about Mint and Zeke having children together. The heroes huddle up, plotting dinner like it's part of the mission. Once they're back at the castle, they all agree to eat together, and they're insisting Shay tag along so they've got company. The demon realm's deepest core unfolds on screen, a giant funnel plunging straight into the darkness, where the air feels so cursed it sparks instant fear and awe. That old man, who once cursed the former demon lord and his daughter, now thanks them for saving his life, and when he meets Rouge, the demon, he greets him with real respect. He strides up to Rouge's throne and meets a savior face to face, while an old man closes in, feeling the weight of his authority. Up above, Rouge just stares down in silence. Rouge is the demon lord. His presence oozes raw power and unnerving calm, and he just watches every twist unfold with laser focus. The old man keeps talking and admits that without Rouge, he would have been snagged by Zeke's forces and the very deity that marked him for blessing. His gratitude sounds real, not rehearsed. Rouge goes quiet for a moment. Then the old man leans in, eyes locked on him, and tells him to focus. Rouge knows this is something huge. A weird creature crawls out of nowhere, a shapeless horror with horns and twisted limbs, and the old man's eyes go wide. Then it shifts and snarls like something alive. The old man leans in and says it's a synthetic magical beast, straight up, brand new, just acquired recently, and you can see a flicker of excitement crackle across his face. Rouge tried to nurse the beast back to health. He offered food, watched for hunger, even waited for it to bite. Yet the creature snapped its jaws shut and refused every single thing he brought. The old man pressed him, asking what he truly fed that mysterious thing, and the Lord finally admitted, straight up, that he'd been feeding it human remains, acting like that was totally fine for a creature like it. The old man stared, half in shock and half in dread, and couldn't find the words, so all he managed was a strange sound in the wilderness, like he still refused to believe what he'd just heard. He tried to talk his way out of it, saying the creature was twisted by circumstances, but it used to be human, so he pushed the idea of using animal meat instead of people. The demon just sat there and listened to the old man's excuses, then cut him off with a quick, calm reply, while his face stayed stone cold with not a single emotion showing. The old man hesitated, then stretched out his hand like he might halt it all, or beg for mercy, without even realizing what was happening. Suddenly, a brutal pain tore through him. He screamed in mind-shattering agony as his blood spilled out of his body. The old man's scream tore through the room as he demanded the demon's reason, and the demon, lounging on his throne, answered with eerie calm that he was only obeying the rules already set in stone. He said the rumors are wild. To steal another being's power, you've got to eat the one who has it. Then the power jumps into you. The old man stared in terror, his mouth stuck shut. Only a soft groan escaped as pain and the fear of dying any second froze him in a dazed silence. The demon stared at it in disbelief. He'd never expect his father and the arena to be tangled in a tale like this, where the body's very foundation is powered by the god who shattered the curse. Rue drifts away at his own pace, and the demon jolts him with a stunned, "Where do you think you're going?" Rue just shrugs it off, calmly saying he's heading to sleep, and asks to be woken up later like nothing at all is happening. The demon trembles, begging how they're supposed to handle God's power when it looks untouchable. Then Rouge just walks off with a shrug, dead calm and totally uninterested. Left alone, the demon rasped a grim sound and stared as the Lord's door shut behind him. Then his strength drained away, and panic hit as he had no idea what to do next. Even with despair choking him, the demon snaps his voice around and roars that they'll hit the god's power first, then go after Zeke. Pure fury boils over as he spits a curse at Rouge, calling him a crazy bastard. Rage blazing in his chest, the demon roars that he'll slaughter Zeke, snarling that the demon lord's newborn army will crush him. Then he erupts into a wild, booming laugh. The story shifts to the backyard of the veterinary castle, and the whole vibe flips. No chaos, just quiet, peaceful moments that feel totally different from what came before. In the backyard, a lavish picnic is being set up, baskets piled high with sandwiches, snacks, and sweet desserts, so someone can't help but gush over how mouth-watering it all looks, while another blurts, "Did Mint make all of this?" The girl tells him she makes dinners like this every day, just for her brother, no one else. But today, she's ready to spoil the whole room, even though normally only he gets a bite. During the conversation, the guy blurts out that he invites someone to lunch every single day, and that simple habit turns him into pure good vibes. And Tiffany can't help but admire it, even feeling a little envy at how sweet that kind of routine is. Chichan crosses her arms, narrows her eyes, and demands what's so special about a packed lunch, then fires back that she can do the exact same thing if she wants to. Mint snaps her back to a horrifying old memory, when she tried to feed her brother dead mice and lizards. Then Chichan's face twists with pure anger, and the crowd around her bursts into awkward comedic reactions. He tries to calm everything down, saying every species has its own taste buds, and the animal blurts out that she's crazy about rats, then stares at Zeke like, "So why aren't you feeling this too?" Zeke can't help but look a little flustered, but he keeps the vibe friendly anyway. Even after that messy misunderstanding, the girl refuses to fall behind. She bursts with confidence and promises she'll learn to cook killer dinners, and everyone else rallies behind her, buzzing with excitement for the delicious success to come. At the picnic, the talk suddenly flips to studies, and the boy's so shocked he can barely speak because his sister is about to drop something huge about schoolwork, and the whole group leans in and listens like it's a secret mission. The girl tells him Elena keeps popping into the library, where she devours books with real fire, so he's stunned because he'd never once seen her care this much about learning before. Taya leans in and asks if Elena even lives in his country, and with that one line, he reminds everyone she's the princess of the demon nation. Taya wastes no time confirming it, saying she lives with her father, and you can tell he means it. They're tight, like family. He points out that the second Elena starts chasing new ideas and actually learning, it's a huge green light, because he's already seen what happens when the curse is broken. He helped free their family from the Founder's curse before, and it completely flipped their fate. Meanwhile, Mint can't stop thinking about Elena buried in books at the library, studying like her life depends on it. Sure, everyone loves how eager she is, but the girl watching her clocks the truth. Worry flickers in Elena's eyes. The hero stares out into the distance, brow furrowed, like he's piecing the whole puzzle together, unease and curiosity sparking in his eyes as he weighs what to do next. Not far from the main character's castle, a massive old tree towers over everything, its branches casting shade across the whole area, while a hushed forest surrounds it, so calm you can almost hear the leaves breathe as the distant outlines of the castle and mountains loom on the horizon. Yelena perched on a thick tree branch, book cradled in her hands, and read in dead silence, totally lost in the words, while the only sound in the whole world was the leaves rustling softly around her. The girl lets out a tiny, weary sigh, shuts her eyes, and forces herself to stop reading for just a moment. Her expression softens with sadness and deep thought, like she's wrestling with something that really matters. Suddenly, her move gets wrecked. Then the main character pops up behind her out of nowhere. The girl gasps and screams. Fear spikes across her face, and the book nearly rockets out of her hands. Fear yanks the balance out from under her, and she tumbles off the high branch, her hair and dress whipping through the air as pure panic flashes across her face. The hero snaps into action and catches her with slick precision, crashing onto the ground in a totally wonky off-balance pose, then clutches her tight so she doesn't take a single hit. In his arms, a frightened girl clings tight, but her breathing steadies. The hero shoots her a small, apologetic smile, and she blushes and mumbles that she's okay, that it's all fine. They start talking, and the hero drops the bombshell. With his power, he can pinpoint where people are within 500 meters, and it's probably tied to a god's strength. The girl drops her gaze and nods along, cheeks burning a little as the truth clicks. Yep, this is exactly how it is. The second the guy spots the book, his eyes widen at what's inside, and he blurts out whether she's read the medical textbook, only to realize she didn't see this coming, because her reaction gives it all away and hooks him even harder. He admits he heard she's been grinding hard, and he wants to know why she's training so relentlessly, and the girl flushes with embarrassment, because she can't quite find the right words to answer him. The girl drops her eyes and admits it straight. She can't fight, and she can't cast magic, and the heartbreak in her voice says it all. Without talent, she can't be useful like the rest. He replays her confession in his head and just freezes in silence, staring, searching for the right words, trying to read her pain and figure out how to support her. He pulls her close to talk and tells her he's all ears, ready to listen. The girl beams, thanking him for the support and taking the chance to finally open up. The girl spills her origins. She's the daughter of a demon lord, and that's why everyone once expected her to wield terrifying powers right from the start. Even with all that status, she couldn't find a single true talent, and the people she loved kept slipping away, one by one, until she was finally stranded, completely alone. She still remembers the demons around her openly sneering at her, their smirks right out in the open, her childhood dragged through humiliation and grime. He sympathizes with her and straight up sees how brutal everything she went through really was, but it hits him hard that she was forced to swallow her pain and hide it all this time. The girl admits she doesn't have what it takes to lead the demon tribe, and the guy just shrugs it off, saying it's exactly what anyone would expect in her position. The demon princess admits that when her father crumpled with illness, she saw her one shot to prove she mattered, so she threw herself into finding a cure, praying it would bring back the recognition she'd lost. But the story flips hard. Her best efforts to fight the disease fail one by one. Her condition crumbles day by day, and her enemies tighten their grip until Jammer finally strips her of command and leaves her stranded as nothing more than a decorative princess. He hangs on her every word in dead silence, staring right into her eyes without cutting in, and when she finally finishes, it hits him. The sympathy in his face says he truly gets the weight of everything she's been through. She keeps spilling her heart, admitting she's crushed, feeling totally worthless because she doesn't have the medical know-how or the political tricks to live up to her family's sky-high expectations. He leans in and reassures her. Yeah, not everyone is born with the talent to rule a country, and if he's being honest, he never could have broken the curse without divine power, because some things just can't be fixed by one person's will alone. She thanks him for everything, his support, his words, and admits talking feels just a bit easier now, while he tells her not to sink into self-pity, reminding her, loud and clear, that she isn't facing her struggles alone. The heroine flashes a warm smile and tells him straight up. Talking so honestly made her feel worlds better. Then she bows her head and apologizes, saying she hates that her worries kept pulling his focus away. He goes quiet for a while, weighing her words like they're dangerous, and that silence screams how serious this is, like he's desperately searching for the perfect way to stand by her. Suddenly, with a sharp seriousness that catches everyone off guard, he snaps that politics isn't his lane at all, and makes it crystal clear he doesn't see himself as the right kind of role model for power. He shoots back instantly with the one thing he's truly great at, medical knowledge. And the girl's eyes widen because she realizes a brand new opportunity is bursting open right in front of her. After that shock announcement to become her teacher, the guy just grins and sticks to it, telling Elaine she'll be his student, while Elaine blurts one more question in pure disbelief, trying to make sense of what's happening. Training kicks off, and the mentor slams the lessons into motion. Elena, already set on her choice, shoots back with bright, eager energy, calls him master, and dives headfirst into her very first lessons under his watch. Meanwhile, the three mints, T and Chi included, lean in and swap theories about what's going on, and then one of them drops the bomb. Zeke has taken Elena on as his apprentice, sending everyone around him into shock and non-stop curiosity. Zeke's younger sister is totally stunned. Since he's a veterinarian, she can't believe he decided to train someone, and she especially can't wrap her head around why that choice came out of nowhere. Chai can't shake the doubt. Elena doesn't look like a veterinarian at all, which makes everything feel completely off and turns their shock up even higher. Meanwhile, Mint tells Elena, "Trust me, I'll teach you a ton," and pushes her to start at the absolute basics, insisting she'll learn best one step at a time. Zeke bursts with excitement and declares he's starting over with the basics of rock climbing, yet the others are even more shocked because they were sure he'd take a totally different approach to learning. On the edge of a cliff, Zeke lays out his real game plan. No theory, just practical skills, while his sister fires off cruel jabs like, "You can't teach," and he just stands firm, refusing to back down. Zeke shows Elena exactly how to start scaling that rock. He takes a smooth, easy jump, then straight up leads the way, proving his confidence and teaching hands-on, step by step. Zeke is up that rock in a flash, moving with raw skill and relentless energy, proving his way isn't from theory, but from non-stop physical practice. Elena cranes her neck toward the towering mountain, eyes wide as she finally grasps how brutal this climb is going to be. And behind her, one of the girls just stares, mildly amazed at what she's seeing. Zeke rockets down the mountain and lands right beside the girls, fists set and eyes locked like, "Let's train." The moment he makes that move, everyone turns to stare, because this isn't a warm-up, it's the real start. The guy thrusts an object into Elaine's hands, and she freezes for a split second, caught off guard, like she isn't sure what he's about to reveal. Yet she's already leaning in, ready to take in whatever he's teaching her. Zeke's palm cradles a rare snowdrop of Hina, one that only grows above 800 meters. And when he explains how it drives worms out of gar and even gets used for veterinary care, you can't help but get chills. Zeke tells him a veterinarian has to gather all kinds of ingredients. Sometimes they even have to scale towering heights just to reach monsters hiding in places nobody can reach. Elena listens closely, nods again and again, and suddenly the whole job feels way more complex, and the weight of that responsibility hits her hard. Fueled by inspiration, Elena bursts into the air and launches a spell to fly up and snatch the ingredient she needs. Then Zeke spots her panic, shouts to her at once, and stops her in her tracks. He snaps that using magic can throw off nature's balance and send the animals fleeing, then tells her to stand up on her own, no spells, because real survival comes from practical skills. Confused, Elena repeats her teacher's words under her breath, and her face tightens with worry, because up to now, she'd always leaned on magic, never on sheer physical grit. She stares at the rock, unsure she can pull herself up with just her hands, and her voice cracks with confusion. This way of climbing is new to her, and it scares her. They all crowd around the rock, eyes narrowed with uneasy confusion, trying to figure out how on earth they're supposed to handle the task staring them in the face. Elena lunges for the rock, but it won't budge. She tumbles down again and again, scraping through failure, while her mentor just watches, calm as ever. After the tries all fail, the teacher snaps into action and announces the next training part will happen right on the shore. New scenery, new challenge. He jabs a finger at a tiny island and dares Elaine to picture a wounded unicorn stranded there, then asks what she'd do if that disaster was real. Elena snaps to the truth. Magic won't work here, and her companions are stunned, realizing the job is way harder than it ever looked. After thinking it through, Elena fires back that if that's how it has to be, she'll swim to the island alone, without magic. Zeke grabs Chi-chan and demands a real demonstration of how to cross that water the right way, so Elena finally understands what the task is truly asking of her. Chi-chan shoots back with total confidence, bragging that she's an amazing swimmer and will breeze through it, instantly lifting everyone's spirits. Elena is stunned when Chi-chan suddenly darts into action. She hops into the water and starts swimming like she's always done it. Then, out of nowhere, something hits her and she lets out a sharp, terrified scream. In the water, Chi-chan spots tiny creatures swarming around her, clinging tight and dragging her down, turning every stroke into a struggle. Elena stares at the lake, worry clawing at her chest as bubbles churn up from the dark water. Then a scream rips through the air from Chi-chan, like she's gone under trouble for good. Elena shoots out a frantic shout to her friend, scrambling to understand what's happening. Zeke calmly lays it all out to Elaine. Turns out the lake is packed with kelpies, and swimming there is suicide, while Shi-chan, already hauled himself onto the shore after the incident, erupts and insists it was way worse than he even lets on. Irritated, Chi-chan snaps at Zeke like, "I knew it would turn out exactly like this, yet you still told me to wade into the water." Zeke stays cool and points out that he expected way more careful instincts, and he just wanted her to step in, not launch herself into it. Chi-chan sat on the shore in soaking wet clothes, clutching her head and blasting the lake experience as miserable, her irritation blazing across her face as she made it crystal clear that meeting that kelpie felt awful. Lately, the kelpies have been causing trouble again, and Shi-chen quickly shuts down Elena's guilt. He waves off her apology and tells her everything's totally fine. Elena throws her hands over her face and starts beating herself, calling herself a useless princess who can't even handle her own people. Then Chi-chan rushes in to calm her down, even as he redirects the blame straight onto Zeke. Chi-chan replays everything in her head, then lands on a shocking idea. Maybe Zeke set the whole mess up on purpose just to see her soaked, and now she's not sure what he's really up to. Min urges Chi to back off and keep quiet before things get even more awkward, but Chi-chan refuses to be sidelined. If Zeke wants to see her in action, she'll show him every single bit herself. A nasty rivalry sparks between the two girls. Chi-chan snaps that her rival is just jealous of her grown-up charms, and the girl fires back that she's using her brain to win her brother's attention. Zeke watched their bickering, smirked, and whispered that even with all their fights, the girls actually click. Then the girls froze, shocked, and demanded, "What did you just say?" Back on the beach, Zeke grins like everything's under control, shrugging off the chaos we just survived, and he's cool as ice as he gears up for the next move. He keeps going, pressing Elaine with a "what would you do?" question in that same kind of situation, and the look on his face screams that he's ready for her reasoning, not just random guesses. She blurts out that if the magic fails and the swimming trick doesn't work, then they're in trouble for real. And Princess Tai jumps in right after, calling it a straight-up mystery. Zeke grins at their plan, bursts out laughing that they're totally on the right track, and you can tell he loves seeing the girls start figuring things out for themselves. Then he stops messing with them and finally drops his correct answer. He spun around and walked off, dropping a short, sharp explanation. Then, out of nowhere, the main character just started walking across the water, and the girls were thrown off, because that answer felt way too simple to be real. Zeke tells the girls that since kelpies lurk in the water, this isn't simple. Then he says they'll reach the island by walking on water. The girls on the shore stare at him, baffled, and demand how he plans to pull that off without magic. Zeke spins around with that wide-eyed, innocent look, like he's honestly shocked by how they're reacting. The main character shows the girls how he dips his foot in the water, then he marches it forward, inch by inch, until one foot finally starts to sink, and he just keeps walking anyway. The girls sit there, mildly annoyed, and one blurts out that her brother's a terrible teacher, while the other instantly regrets even asking because the explanation is so absurd it's almost unbelievable. Finally, a heated dialogue erupts. Zeke demands, "Why not?" And Chi-chan snaps back that only he can do it, leaving the girls fuming at how special his power really is. Elena grips her resolve and decides she's going to walk on water, no matter how impossible it is, while the girls behind her scramble to stop her, insisting she shouldn't take her brother's words so seriously. But Elena's already locked in. Elena bursts out shouting that this is her challenge, then sprints forward and leaps across the water. Thump, 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 with every landing, as she charges ahead like she's about to crash straight into battle. Against everyone's wild expectations, Elena stays afloat and instantly erupts with joy, shouting she pulled it off, while the rest can only gasp in shock at how that turned out. Tiffany stares at Elena's success, convinced Zeke must have taught her everything, while Mint, way less sure, tries to set the record straight that it's not exactly how it happened. Suddenly, it's revealed that Elena isn't casting magic at all. She's springing across the heads of the kelpies that have risen to the surface, and the demon princess blurts in shock, realizing the help is coming from the creatures themselves. The kelpies themselves beam and cheer Elena's win, calling her a princess as they celebrate her big achievement. because honestly, they don't mind a bit when someone gets that close. Elena blushes a little and asks the Kelpies if they're really helping her, and one of them grins and swears they'll do everything for her. The Kelpies grin with pure joy, saying they're just messing around and loving every second of helping out, and when they see Elena smiling, their happiness just doubles. Zeke, locked onto the scene, mutters that the monsters don't look like they hate Elena nearly as much as they should. Then Elena quickly nods and agrees. The Kelpies beam at the princess, telling her their thoughts are finally crystal clear again, that they were clouded before, and that they're just relieved she's okay. Then they greet her with sweet, kind words. After they dig into the past curse, Zeke leans in and says the monster's brain-melting weirdness had to come from either that ancient curse or the jammer messing with them. And now that it's gone, he's sure everything starts getting better. The boy says that now the curse is gone, the princess can finally reach out to the Kelpies, and he even suspects that might be why the castle shunned her in the first place. The princess nods without a fuss, and you can see her mind racing through what went down. His words lock in her suspicions and make everything click. The Kelpies burst up to the princess with joyful cheers, thrilled to finally meet her, and she beams right back, thanking them and saying she's just as happy to make contact. Zeke tells her the princess can finally unleash her magic without holding back, and he's sure she'll connect with the creatures way better than he ever could. One of the Kelpies stared at the doctor with pure admiration and blurted out for an autograph, and the doctor just grinned, completely seeing nothing wrong with it. The doctor starts digging for answers, and the first thing he asks is, what are the Kelpies' names? They stare him down and say, we don't have names, just Kelpies, all of us. The doctor's eyebrows lift in surprise, and the princess quickly explains that it's just not how Kelpie kind works. They don't go by personal names. It's their whole group, their shared quirk. Zeke's little sister chimes in that most magical creatures rarely get their own names, and the doctor's face lights up as he finally nods. Everything clicks into place. Wanting to shake things up, the doctor starts tossing out names he thinks are perfect. Baby Kelpie, beautiful Kelpie, even Kelpina, but everyone else thinks he's gone way too far. Zeke clocks it. Everyone only knows how to pick at him. Then the others hit him with kindness, praising the simple name he gave, easy enough for kids to remember, and even some genuinely like it, while his sister leans in and admits her brother still has his weaknesses. Zeke snaps his head around, stunned by something off, then whips his eyes upward, shocked and alarmed as he tries to make sense of the strange thing unfolding right in front of him. Freshly crowned Kelpies rise up before Zeke, blazing with divine light as they surge into majestic, mermaid-like forms. And just like that, they completely wipe out their old shape. The heroes stare in stunned silence at the new creatures, and Zeke's eyes lock onto them as recognition hits like, wait, that's a Kelpie. The whole group tightens up at once, bracing themselves as the shock turns into tense, watchful horror. One of the new creatures rushes to Zeke and thanks him for the name, then admits it sparked an existential evolution, wiping their old self clean and reshaping them into a totally new way of existing. The creature swears this new power will be even more useful to Zeke and the princess, and its face breaks with heartfelt gratitude and rock-solid devotion, like it's begging its saviors to know it means every word and will serve them with everything it's got. The girls can't stop buzzing as they trade stories about what happened, gushing over how the Kelpies' figures have transformed into something downright divine, because this result nobody saw coming is pure shock, all grand and towering in its new form. Tiffany bursts into delighted cheers, swearing the whole miracle only happened because Zeke named the creature, and to her, this mind-blowing discovery flips everything she thought she knew about magical creatures on its head. His little sister laughs and reminds him, Zeke also gave Cheech her name too. And when she asks it again, confusion floods her face, until it finally clicks and she realizes what he meant, way too late. Chi-chan snaps in fury, accusing Mint of bullying her again. But Mint stays ice cold and says that no matter how much power her brother has, it all boils down to the source material. The Animal Kingdom's princess leans in and thinks hard about it. Zeke has named someone else before, and she tries to pull the name back from his history. She tells him to remember, eyes drifting aside as tense lines in the background scream that something big is about to hit. Zeke hears the announcement and snaps his head up in shock, eyes wide as confusion flickers across his face. He blurts a stunned question like he can't believe who it's for. Out of nowhere, a little girl lunges onto Zeke and clamps her arms around him, and everyone else just stares in shock. Zeke freezes, totally baffled, trying to work out who in the world just jumped him. Shay clutches Zeke like he's the only thing real, staring him down with raw, heavy emotion. Then Zeke jerks in shock, blurts her name, and realizes exactly who stands before him. High above, the Dragon Lord's silhouette cuts across the sky, and Zeke snaps his head upward, half stunned, half refusing to believe he's really right in front of him. The Lord glides through the air like a storm, confirming it with a calm, crushing certainty. He's the Dragon Lord, and nothing less. When the Overlord drops to the ground, Zeke steps up and demands to know why he's here, and the Overlord calmly tells him it's finally time for the event to begin. The dragon tells everyone he's here for Shay's evolution, and his calm, confident voice makes it feel like truth, so the whole group leans in and listens, hanging on every word. Zeke locks eyes with Shay, and the name he gave her flashes back in his mind. Then it cracks into a small, knowing smile as he blurts it out like he's finally hearing the truth of his own words. Zeke couldn't believe it. Could a girl really evolve that easily? Then the dragon cut in and explained. Dragons have way stronger magical vessels than most magical beasts, and even their tiny wings are far more developed than what other creatures are born with. Zeke listens to the explanation and nods like he finally gets it, a small smile creeping onto his face as his words land with total understanding. Then everything turns quiet, like the whole world just exhaled. Zeke softly strokes Shay's head, smiling as he admits she started as a tiny, cute dragon, but has now blossomed into a beautiful girl. Then he leans in, excited to keep working with her, because he's genuinely loving every bit of how much she's grown. Shay tilts her gaze up, and her eyes light up with pure happiness as Zeke's care and support wash over her. So she smiles, just a little, like she's found her footing, and that warm hand on hers feels like his quiet stamp of approval for what's coming next. Shaya flashes a radiant smile at Zeke and blurts out that she's totally on board. She's loving what he says, and she jumps at his offer to keep working, her grin shouting pure joy and thank you for the care he's shown. At this point, Chi and Mint start freaking out. Mint, all tense, snaps at Shaya to keep back, while Chi-chan urges him to greet his elders first because Shaya's itching to join Zeke's entourage. Zeke flashes a small smirk, zeroing in on how nervous the girls suddenly are, like he's trying to piece together what happened. Right then, the Lord bursts into laughter, because he can feel his presence piling pressure on everyone around him. She jolts with shock when Zeke says her evolution will be monitored, then freezes as realization hits. He's the one calling the shots on her development, and that leaves her more than a little thrown. Zeke steps in and calms the room, saying they're not washing their hands of Shay's responsibility. Her growth just needs the right kind of push, and he'll be the one to deliver it. And everyone gets how serious this is and nods in agreement. Elena beams at Shay, genuinely thrilled by her progress, while everyone around keeps staring because they all know this moment matters for the little dragon. Shay clings to Elena with shaking shyness and finally blurts out her heartfelt sympathy. Elena freezes for a second at the sudden confession. Then her face lights up with joy, even as a little confusion flickers in her eyes. Overlord watches the scene unfold and realizes Shaya's bond with the demon princess only happened because she stayed close to Zeke, and it never would have happened without his push, his influence, and his support. Zeke freezes when they ask if he's heard of Onigashima Island, then admits he's never even heard the name, right as the other person lights up and dives into non-stop hype about the place. The dragon proudly paints a vivid picture of its cozy little island in the southern seas, packed with magic, and even points out a spot where Shaya can swim, and Zeke's jaw drops in shock. Zeke storms up to Mint and asks if she knows anything about the island. Mint nods and tells him it's famous for tourist routes and pilgrimages to those so-called places of power. Mint admits that weird rumors have been swirling lately, that place might not be safe at all, and her expression tightens with quiet worry as she tells you. The dragon leans in and reassures them. He even saw the island with his own eyes just lately, so it's still calm, still breathtaking, and the men to grieve can only apologize for the mistake because you can't argue with an eyewitness. The dragon swears Shay is going to love that island and tells the crew to head there themselves if they want to. Mint nods and backs the plan, insisting a little distance will do Zeke and his worn-out brother some good, while behind her everyone jumps at the news like it's exactly what they wanted. Tiffany can barely contain her excitement. She beams and promises everyone will go together, and the moment feels so close she's practically counting down the seconds. They close in on Elena and straight up ask if she'll come with them. Elena freezes in shock, cheeks warming, then blurts out, "Are you sure I should be joining you?" T happily thrusts her hand toward Elena, declares they're friends, and tells her they're going to have a blast together. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just jump in. Elena blurts out, shocked, "Are you sure I can be your friend?" Her eyes shine with emotion, because this wild new feeling hits her for the first time. Zeke grins and swears he'll keep training Elena even on the trip, since they're not done yet, and everyone else cheers right along with him. Tears sparkle in Elaine's eyes as she smiles, happy and overwhelmed, and she tells them, right there, that she's in. Mild and Shay shot Elena with serious stares and laid down the rules. Don't try to slip away from their eyes, and you two are stuck watching each other non-stop. Then Zeke stepped in, trying to talk them around. The Dragon Lord makes the call on the spot. He's headed for that island, and then he bluntly warns that they'll need a boat or some other way to get there. He'd already lined up transport, dragging his friends into it to make sure he had a ride. Then bam! A huge dragon bursts into view, and Zeke throws his gratitude at them for backing him up. Just as the team kicks off, Shay beams and waves goodbye to her dad. While Zeke nods and swerves he's ready, her father smiles, tells Zeke to look after Shay, and sends them off to have a blast. The narrator snaps it into place. Shay rockets off with Zeke and the crew, heading straight for Onigashima, that eerie island everyone keeps whispering about. Onigashima, inside the castle, she presses on again, voice tight with worry, because everyone knows this place reeks of disaster. The advisor bursts in and says the island just turned into a high-risk nightmare because a brand new magical beast has appeared, and the conditions are wildly unstable now. On the island, the crew keeps debating what's going on, and Dragon Lord Elrond leans in with a smug grin, saying he's heard the same talk from people he knows, and he's even seen the island with his own eyes. Yet he didn't spot a single hint of unrest. Queen Sophia demands he nail the exact time, and he panics, trying to squeeze this moment out of his memory. Then, the Dragon Lord finally remembers the last time he saw the island. With a grin so wide it practically glows, he shrugs that it's been a full 500 years. Since he's a dragon, time bends for him, and the way he says it makes it sound totally normal, like nothing about it even surprises him. Elsewhere, Jammer shows up in a chef's outfit, shoving a cart packed with food while scratching his head like, "Why me?" Then he strides over and starts heckling the guy he's delivering to, calling him a gourmet, only for the food to turn out totally out of this ordinary. The cook slips into the steam room to feed the formless mass of flesh, then freezes when he spots it from the side, because it already has Zeke's monster body, arms and a head. It glares somewhere off screen and, with pure rage, snaps Zeke's name like a curse. Suddenly, a colossal king erupts out in full rage, menacing face, bulging eyes, then he roars Zeke's name, flails his arms like he's about to strike, and grips a plate as if it's a weapon. The heroes soar through the sky, and Zeke grins as he calls out that he can already spot the ground ahead, ready for a quick, smooth landing. From out of nowhere, the outline of the mysterious island of Onigashima punches through the horizon, and one of the heroes blurts, "Wait, is this really the place we were chasing?" They finally make it, and the heroes thank the massive dragon for the ride. He just grins and tells them getting them there was nothing at all. The dragon can taste the tension in the air of the island, and he snaps the group into action, warning them to stay sharp because something unsettling crawls through the entire area. Zeke shot the dragon a shocked look and demanded answers about that strange disturbance rolling across the island. Mint realizes the island doesn't feel anything like the resort the Dragon King described, and a weird chill crawls in her gut as she senses something is off. The girls catch that weird smell too, but then Tai spots something out in the distance and yanks everyone's attention toward a lone silhouette crawls out of the forest shadows. Something unknown, something waiting. You shout to him with a huge grin, calling him one of the locals from the island, and even the others buy it too, insisting he must be an islander. Out of nowhere, a terrifying horned monster with razor-sharp teeth lunges into their path, and the whole company freezes in pure panic. The girls shriek in pure horror because the shock hits them out of nowhere. The creature rockets forward with a feral growl, and the whole crew freezes in pure terror. Zeke snaps into action, blasts paralysis magic, and freezes the attacker in midair. After Zeke crushes the monster for good, he rushes over and asks the girls if they're all right, and they look at him and thank him like he just saved their lives. Zeke leans in, stares hard at the monster in front of him, and spots something seriously weird about how it's fallen. As Zeke closes in, he whips around to the others, spots the creature's blood, and starts studying it like it's a clue that could crack everything. Elena swears she's never seen creatures like these in the army, and Mint can't stop guessing maybe there's something native to the island. Zeke unleashes his power and dives into the creature's blood sample. With a zoomed-in shot of the blood on display, Zeke leans in and fires, asking Mint what she thinks about it. Mint spots something unexpected, and her surprise hits instantly. The girl points at the massive, bloodied image of the creature, and with a confident nod, she confirms Zeke's guess. Zeke tells him the ugly changes you can actually see are symptoms of the disease, and the swelling is unmistakable. Princess Tai blurts out whether the monster is sick, and Zeke snaps back, "No, it's not a monster at all. It's a man ravaged by a disease." Tiffany jolts at Zeke's shocking words, and right after, Zeke starts purging the man of his disease. His face twists with pure shock when the creature's disgusting shell suddenly buckles and starts to deform. Then, step by step, its body reshapes into a normal human form, like that hideous shell has been ripped away. The short-horned guy stares at his own body in total shock, completely baffled, and blurts out his confusion like, "What just happened to me?" The protagonist wears a calm grin and says it's all okay now. Then the girls stare in shock, and the fear finally drains into relief. He introduces himself as Shizuo, part of the Oni clan living right here on Onigashima, and with a polite bow, he apologizes for the hassle. Tiffany beams with real joy and tells him, "I'm so happy you've bounced back from that serious illness." Shizuo is shocked. He realizes his condition isn't an illness at all, but some horrifying curse messing with him. He thanks him for saving his life, and the protagonist breaks it down. This whole condition was caused by a virus, but he still found a way to beat it and cure him. Mint grills the demon, asking if any more infected are out there on the island, and the demon nods grimly, saying the infection has already swallowed most of the island's people. The stakes have skyrocketed. If this keeps going, the whole island could get wiped out. Shizuo starts spilling the truth. Onigashima used to be a peaceful island, where everyone stayed neutral and dodged wars like they were poison. He swears their island used to be nothing but calm and easy, right up until the day, just a few months back, something finally went wrong. The girl voices her worry, asking what happened because everything looks so calm and secure right now. Shizuo stares dead serious, saying that day on the island, real evil crawled out and everything turned terrifying. The girls press him again, and when they hear what evil really means, they're blown away because they can't believe a word of it. Shizuo tells them that's the monster they named back then points out it was just a mass of flesh being puppeted by some old man. Shizuo then tells them how the creature started dumping toxic miasma into the air until the entire island was drowned in it. The miasma burst through the city in seconds, choking everything in its path, and once it latched onto someone, that victim, pale-faced and helplessly, transformed into a terrifying, unstoppable zombie. The heroes stumble back in disbelief as those memories crash into them. What they hear feels downright impossible. Shizuo struggles on, because nearly everyone who inhales that miasma turns into monsters just like him. And by the time it's over, around 90% of the island is infected, mindless, and stripped of who they used to be. Zeke finally clicks. Those deadly miasmas aren't just random smoke. They're exactly what they spotted from the sky as they closed in on the island. Chi-chan's stomach drops when she realizes the island is drowned in miasma. So every breath they take is tainted, and panic rips through her as she fears she'll get infected any second. She pleads with Zeke to end her before he steps in, because she's terrified that, if the demons get their way, she'll end up a zombie like the rest. Shizuo's confirmation slams the truth into her. If they keep breathing that miasma, their bodies will rot from the inside out, and they'll start turning into living corpses. Zeke calmly tells them it's probably his divine power at work. Like a vaccine, it's shielding them right now. Shizuo freezes in shock, blurting out that Zeke's power feels like a divine blessing because right now they're living inside real, world-class protection. Shizuo drops to his knees and begs Zeke for help, then hypes him like a messenger from heaven, someone who can save the whole island. Zeke shoots back a small, confident smile, like he planned from the start to help the residents and pull them out of this disaster. The whole team backs Zeke's call, but there's a sharp little smirk in the air because once again, they're not getting the rest they were praying for. Side by side, they slam the problem down fast so they can finally escape on that vacation they'd been dreaming about. The heroes get hauled straight to the local city's town hall, where they're met by Sakura, Onigashima's new owner, who greets these fresh arrivals with calm restraint and real respect. Zeke and his crew crowd around the Lady of Onigashima, and Shizue leans in to tell her this is the man who saved. Sakura, the island's ruler, declares that word about Zeke has already raced across Onigashima. People are whispering that he's the Demon Lord in white. Zeke grins, stunned that someone picked a nickname for him, while his companions light up and cheer that it's seriously badass. Shizuel blurts out an apology to Zeke for being rude, even though he knows Zeke is special. But Zeke waves it off, saying in his condition he couldn't even help himself. Zeke explains that Shizuo filled him in on what happened on the island, and he's banking on the castle being a safe zone where every resident can breathe easy. Sakura confirms it. This island pearl shields them from the smashes, but when you step outside the gates, it turns into a life-or-death risk. Hearing that, Zeke's eyes widen. This mess is way worse than he ever pictured in the first place. Outside, the infected have clawed their way into the world, bursting into horrific zombies, and Shizuo can't help but feel relieved that he dragged them to safety, while Alina frowns, saying these nightmare scenes are exactly the kind of trouble she as training should never have to face. Sakura hears that Zeke can cure someone, and her eyes widen. Wait, a real cure exists? Zeke tells them he can cure the disease, but he slams the brakes on the details for now, because this isn't just an illness, it's an epidemic. The demons burst into pure shock when they hear about the chance to reverse the disease, because it sounds unreal to them. Face to face, they're staring like, no way, and they never thought they'd get hope like this in a moment this desperate. Zeke calmly admits he can't promise a full reversal of the disease, but he swears he'll cure everyone. Then Tiffany lights up, praising his power and calling him magnificent. The demon Zeke saved earlier finally speaks up, confirming he's not lying. Yeah, he was a zombie, but Zeke healed him, and now he's perfectly normal again. Then he straight up backs Zeke's story, giving the whole room a wave of real confidence. Sakura heard the demon's confession and froze in shock, barely able to swallow what was happening. Then, bit by bit, reality hit her. Every word he spoke was true, and suddenly, her whole understanding of the disease and the hope for treatment flipped upside down. The two elder demons finally admit it. The mistress made the right call by refusing to wipe out the infected, and they swear the brutal siege of that castle was worth every second, because now there's a real shot to save everyone. Zeke pinches his brows together and straight up explains what the advisors mean when they say the siege is right, because he's finally trying to understand their logic, since before now he had zero idea about all the details unfolding on the island or the choices that got made here. The elders told them they hadn't launched war on the zombies for 3 whole months, and it was all because the mistress ordered them to hold back from killing, even with danger breathing down their necks. Her choice of restraint proves she once thought a different outcome might still be possible. The girl gasps, asking if they were really under siege the whole time, holding the castle line while she can't believe how they even survived out there, boxed in by dangerous infected for so long. The lady admits they had no real clue what the zombie was going to do next, because half of them were already gone, and the rest had their will ripped away, turning into mindless puppets for the disease. So all they could do was fight to stay alive, and then just hold on, waiting for the end. One demon swivels toward the lady and offers to speak her request, saying that only the ones who've made it this far can truly help, because they're able to heal the deadly disease haunting everyone on the island. The girls huddle close and whisper in awe, praising the ruler's kindness, because her gentle heart and generous ways feel almost unheard of in someone who rules. Sakura choked out the truth. Yeah, she'd been naive, and her habit of putting everything off didn't just backfire, it made everything spiral out of control. She beats herself up because she can't tell what to keep and what to toss, and for a politician, that kind of ignorance is a deadly mistake. Zeke tries to lift her spirits, telling her that it was her kindness that drew people to her in the first place, and he doesn't see the problem at all, while the elder demons perk up at his words, thrilled that he finally understands exactly why they're devoted to their ruler. Zeke steals his nerve, steps up and declares, "I'm here now. Everybody can finally breathe." Then he promises he'll heal them all, no question. Night falls, and Zeke slips up onto the castle roof to size everything up. He peers out across the land as a toxic miasma swallows the horizon. He taps into his analysis ability and sweeps the whole area in seconds, and then, boom, an image of the infection lights up in front of him. Once he uncovers nearly 3,000 infected, the full nightmare finally hits. This isn't a few cases, it's basically the entire island. Everyone else crowds in below, staring up as his younger sister blurts out that Zeke is studying how far the disease has spread so he can figure out the treatment. The lady and Shizuo stare in disbelief at Zeke's powers, because he can blanket the entire island in one shot. Somehow, it feels downright impossible. Zeke's sister beams and says, "Of course he does," like it's obvious, he's her brother, and the pride in her voice makes it feel real. Zeke snaps into action with the purification spell. Once it hits, the cleansing process erupts, wiping the infected from the disease as the whole territory gets covered in that purifying wave. The infected zombies snap back to their senses, chains of control loosen, their bodies start to look normal again, and shock turns into a breathy mix of relief as their faces light up. Some of the healed still can't grasp what's going on. When their human form snaps back, shock hits them so hard they can barely believe they've actually been restored. Everyone who watched Zeke heal gasped when every last person snapped back to normal, and Zeke even admitted his weird power took a ton out of him. But seeing everyone whole again made it all worth it. The lady and her entourage burst into gratitude, thanking Zeke for his help as the results blow them away. Then he simply hops down with zero effort, nodding like it was nothing. Zeke flashes a small smile, waves the praise away like it's no big deal. He claims he just did what he could. Zeke asks to see the crystal they talked about earlier, and the lady instantly nods yes, no pushback at all. He strides up to the crystal, slaps his palm against it and dives in, ready to test its powers and uncover what it's really hiding. Using magic, Zig supercharges the artifact, pouring in power until it's stronger and ready to guard what comes next. Zeke tells Sakura, stunned and surrounded, that this upgraded artifact won't just guard the castle, it'll shield the entire island from whatever danger is coming next, and the full scope of his power hits her like a shockwave. Everyone in the room stares in shock until relief hits them hard and they finally feel truly safe again. Sakura turns to Sei, thanking him for his priceless help, and admits she's at a loss for how to repay him for saving her. She reminds him that Zig is on vacation, then promises him a full, no-holds-barred welcome, just to say thanks. She nervously offers to plan a holiday from the bottom of her heart. Then, if he's truly not against the idea, Zeke can't help but feel a little flustered by how vague the whole thing sounds. Chichan and T suddenly cut them off mid-conversation, block their way, and bark orders to keep their distance. Then Chichan snaps that Sakura shouldn't stress over it. Sakura is left blushing and stunned, because she never saw the girl's reaction to her words coming. Meanwhile, Elena grins and admits she finally gets how those other girls felt when their brand new rival showed up. Mince backs her up, while Shay stares at the girls, totally thrown off. She sprints up to his mistress and warns her to tread carefully, so she can lure the young man with perfect control, while she blushes and admits she just wanted to show them the island. Zig breaks into laughter and declares that everything's finally calm, so bright with happiness that he practically glows, because he's truly overjoyed that he managed to cure the island's inhabitants. All he has to do is track down where the infection started. Then, out of nowhere, one of the elder demons erupts into a scream, begging the lady to look outside, because something out there has thrown everything into chaos. And suddenly, the whole room goes on high alert. The heroes step out onto the balcony and stare up at the sky, and what they witness leaves them wide-eyed, amazed, and terrified. They all lock eyes as a weird creature charges out of the distance, and the whole crowd just freezes, staring like they can't believe their own eyes, because the demon vanishes, reappears out of nowhere, and slams the room with instant shock and panic. The protagonist blurts out that the island's been wiped clean, and the artifact is still siphoning the energy, but the danger isn't done yet, not by a long shot. Chi recoils at the sight of the demon, and soon everyone else spots it too. Its behavior is nothing like last time, and that shift sends worry rippling through the crowd. The demon growls and rattles with eerie sounds, its body warping and reshaping like it's gearing up to become something far more terrifying. Suddenly, an arm rips out of the demon, yanking through space with a violent jerk, and in the chaos, it starts sprouting human limbs as its whole body twists and reshapes. A robed ruler wearing a crown bursts into view before everyone's eyes, and pure shock ripples through the crowd because this new enemy isn't just strong, it's far deadlier than anything they've faced. It becomes crystal clear. This isn't just any demon, it's Rogale himself. He steps up to Sieg and tells him, straight to his face, how much he's missed him. Rugal blurts his name, stunned beyond belief, because he can't even process what he's seeing, and the other heroes stare back, utterly frozen in shock. The girls gasp in horror. Yes, it's the king of Gaetania, Rogale, and somehow his face looks wildly different now. Chi Yi even remembers when he used to be way fatter and sturdier, and everyone's left staring, stunned by just how much he's changed. Zig's certain, because that crown and beard are a dead giveaway. This has to be Rogale. Rogale beams at Sieg and blurts out that he never thought he'd see him here, but there's something off about his voice. His eyes burn with a dark, ominous energy that instantly makes everyone in the room tense. The crowd's standing there utterly baffled. So where the hell is Rugal? Mint leans in and whispers her terrifying guess. Some wicked magic ripped the life out of him and turned it into a demon. Someone hurls praise at Mint for her guess, calling her pretty smart for a human. But every word drips with sarcasm and mockery, spiking the tension between them, while Irina clocks the voice of the speaker instantly. Right then, Jamar Daughter shows up out of nowhere. He manifests beside Rugal in a burst of pure pressure, his aura snapping the air like lightning and forcing everyone to brace for the worst. Jamar snickers at Irina and needles her about how quickly she turned to humans after her father lost his power as Demon Lord, every word dripping with contempt. Zig grabs for control of Irina, urging her to ignore the taunts and stay calm, because right now, that's all that matters. Yet Irina fights to hold her feelings in and backs away anyway. Jamar keeps firing off sarcasm because in his mind, it's Zig who always shows up at the wrong time, and that means he can say it again. Everyone else watches him, tense and wild-eyed. Shamar finally spills the truth. Rogale isn't just a person. He's a trap made to summon a demon, and now his body's been seized and dragged into dark rituals. Then Rogale smiles like a villain, soaking up the chaos and confusion swirling around him. He blurts that he called the demon up himself with forbidden magic, but he already has it under control now, and he can unleash Paimon's terrifying power whenever he wants. Rogale suddenly crashes a strike into Jamar, showing just how unbreakable his will is, and the demon can't even dodge it. Rage flares in the rogue's eyes, and he barrels in mid-chatter to snap Jamar's words in half, proving none of Jamar's talk or taunts can get under his skin. One of the main crew starts roasting Jamar, and the second it hits, Jamar snaps, hurt and furious, telling them to shut up. Rogale blurts out that all he wants is Zeke, and he shuts Jamar's other words out of his mind completely. Jamar stares in disbelief as Rogale, fused with a demon, still clings to insane willpower and refuses to break. Zeke and his sister snap to the terrifying truth. Rogale isn't just sick. Something parasitic has latched onto him and taken over his body. With a fierce glare, Zeke declares, "I'm not done with this demon. There's a personal score I've got to settle." Even after all that chaos, he still reminds himself, Rogale is his patient, so he has to help. The demon perks up at Zeke's voice, screams his name, then the shock snaps into sharp, dangerous tension. Zeke steadies his breathing, points at himself with steel in his eyes, and gets ready to jump in before the next clash explodes. He locks eyes with his opponent, flashes a menacing grin, and the smirk says it all. His gaze is packed with fight-ready fire. Rogale taunts Zeke, asking if he's really trying to get him alone on purpose, and Zeke stays cool, saying it's not exactly like that. Up on the hillside, his comrades panic because the enemy is a demon, but Zeke just shrugs it off. He'll take it solo and tells them, "Don't worry." Rogale admits that when he lays eyes on Zeke, the past hits him like a wave, because their fates are tangled together too tightly to ignore. He still remembers the days when all he felt toward him was pure, burning rage. Rogale can't stop thinking, what does Zig have that he doesn't? And why did everyone ditch him and rally behind the vet? Zig goes stone-cold silent, refusing to answer the brutal question, his face staying perfectly blank. But Rogale finally cracks the code. Power, pure and raw, and a brand new energy surges awake inside him. He finally gets it. Wealth and power mean nothing without strength, because it's strength that turns you into real power and makes people respect you. The protagonist clings to the memory of Rogale's reign, how he sneered at his own subjects, and how the people's hatred toward their former king was completely earned. Rugal, blazing with demonic power, hammers Siege with savage punches, roaring that he deserves to lead and insisting darkness will boost his strength. While Sieg stays ice calm, flat out knowing there's no negotiating, and keeps writing his notes like Rugal's fury doesn't even scare him. The king crashes forward with a crushing strike, blasting out a surge of energy, but right before it lands, an invisible wall snaps his fist to a halt. Rugal freezes in pure shock. His eyes bulge as he can't believe it, unable to accept how anyone could shatter his defenses. Zig stays cool as he watches the demon's grip reach Rugal's mind, scrambling his speech, fogging his memory, and he jots every terrifying detail down in his notebook. Rugal is left reeling. He can't wrap his head around it. The man he just crushed should have been done, but somehow this unnoticed nobody tanked the hit and kept standing. Zig tells Rugal, "Say your name," and Rugal just erupts in laughter, claiming there's no point because everyone already knows exactly who he is. Rugal proudly crowns himself Rugal III, rules the kingdom of Gaetania, and flaunts his hideous demonic hand, eyes and all. Zig scribbled furiously and said, "The patient's consciousness is totally fine. He even prefers the diagnostic way from back then, like the old days." Rugal seethes as memories of the days when everything was perfect hit him. Then Sieg is said to have shattered it all, and Rugal rockets back into the fight, rage swallowing every breath. A thunderous explosion erupts as Rugal lunges back in, unleashing a storm of brutal punches at the main character. But Zeke doesn't flinch. He just calmly swats every hit away like it's nothing. From a distance, they start whispering and guessing. One of them swears it looks like his brother is just doing an inspection, trying hard to keep his cool. Rogale gapes at Sig, stunned by the terrifying power he's sensing, watching him stand there so steady before that demonic force, with zero fear in his eyes. Rogale realizes this is the only path to results. Then, he snaps into action, charging forward with a fresh attack that cranks up the damage and overwhelms everything. With a thunderous cry, Rogale lunges forward, determination blazing. And as his rage surges, he drives straight ahead with one goal: win, no matter what it costs. He erupts into a scream as the demonic power crashes over him and smothers him. He blasts out his full demonic might, and boom! Those wings flare wide and the eyes multiply, because this is his real king power. Zig watches him without blinking and snaps to the horrifying truth. This isn't just an infected soul. It's a full-blown parasitic demon, fully took over the host. With a sharp breath, Zig winds up and snaps a palm strike forward, aiming to shove the enemy's move away in a single, perfect hit, right as it slices off one of the demon's wings. Rugel's mind goes totally blank, because the king is staring at him in stunned disbelief, shocked that his opponent can stand in front of a demonic force with zero fear and not a single hint of excitement. The doctor shrugs. Hoop? Like it's nothing, then keeps slamming the demon, while the last bit of energy around him dwindles fast. Rugelei's jaw drops as he realizes he's completely defenseless, stuck in the crumbling wreckage of his old power. Then the awful truth hits him all at once. Rogale is finally stripped of every power, floating in midair, frozen in total disbelief. He's just starting to clock what they went through. The hero snaps, "That's it," and shuts down his assault, then stands there grinning, totally calm, like the fight never even happened. On Rugel's head, this tiny demon, Paimon, is twitching like it's the funniest thing alive, so the king blurts out his name, completely baffled, like he has no idea what just happened. Right as Rugale turns, the doctor suddenly slides into view and startles him to the core. And the king jerks back at the shock. He hadn't expected anyone to appear like that, and he snaps hard at the doctor's voice. The hero stays perfectly calm, then talks about the final move. One quick flick of his finger, and the parasite gets wiped out for good. The disarmed demon rockets upward, and the king just stares, hit with the brutal truth that his demonic power is fully crushed. Then the parasite drifts into the sky, and everyone holds their breath and watches in dead silence until it vanishes completely from sight. The demon's tiny body tumbles out of the sky, spinning wild through the air as its true form snaps back into place. He hits the ground with a quiet thud, and the last of his strength finally slips away. Rogale jolts back to consciousness, and the doctor beams, "Oh, thank goodness you're awake, old man," then confirms that Rogale is himself again. King Rogale crumples to the ground and barely snaps back to consciousness, staring in total confusion as his mouth just won't form a single word. Bit by bit, the flood of emotions hits him full force, and he breaks down crying loud and non-stop, not holding back for a second, while the people watching from the sidelines just stare at his tears. Jamar's jaw drops as he realizes Paimon's insane power, supercharged by human hunger for power, was wiped out in pure, terrifying seconds. Zeke locks onto Jamar, and then Jamar locks onto the fresh enemy. Now it's crystal clear to the bad guy. His turn has finally arrived. Jamar is hit with full-blown panic, screaming curses at the sky as he realizes the situation is spiraling into something deadly for him. Refusing to quit, he calls forth a monster like a nightmare, an enormous skeletal dragon, and he's hell-bent on ending his opponent with a single, crushing blow. Zeke stays icy calm, snaps his cleansing magic into action, and aims it straight at the summoned monster. No fear, no hesitation. The spell hits, and the dragon transforms so completely that the terrifying brute becomes a gentle, adorable little creature. Jamar's jaw drops in disbelief as he watches a terrifying creature get hauled in and suddenly turn into a harmless patient right before his eyes. Zeke, the seasoned doctor, is thrilled by the treatment's flawless success and can't help wondering if anyone out there still desperately needs help. Meanwhile, another scene participant cracks a joke and tells Jamar, flat out, that one dragon still won't cut it against Zeke. The hero snaps his gaze to the enemy, grabs control of Jamar, and you can practically feel it, like he's saying, "I'm taking the next step." Shamar dashes away from the battlefield by blasting herself out with teleportation magic. The whole squad finally crowds back around the main character, and they trade words like, maybe a teleportation barrier wouldn't be so bad after all. One of the girls spills it. Jamar is a monster of an opponent, and even she and her own father got wiped out by him. Another kid, Zeke, kept judging everything like his strengths were the whole story, never stopping to see how much tougher it is for everyone else. Mint says that's exactly why her brother is so beautiful. She tells the whole thing with a shy little laugh, admitting it took her 3 long years to crack the magic pattern. Then he instantly shows up with a tweak that makes it even better. Zeke lets out a laugh and urges them to drop it, because he doesn't want to keep talking about his own wins. Right then, a little girl kneels beside a sobbing Rugale, hugging his knees as distress shakes his whole body, and she comforts him through the tears. Zeke stares at the fallen enemy, mind racing, completely unsure what to do next. Rogel lay sprawled on the ground, choking on regret, and finally confessed his guilt to Zeke. The heroes stare at the king as the purification works its magic. His face lights up, his nerves settle, and he looks reborn, like he's finally been freed from a weight he never deserved to carry. The king finally confesses he used to see Zeke as a useless slacker, someone who wasted his strength fussing over animals. Now that he finally sees how powerful the protagonist really is, regret crashes in for all his old judgments, and he's left staring in awe at Zeke's secret abilities, only for Zeke to blush and admit it's not that simple, trying to shrug off the praise. Min slams into his brother's moment with the defeated king, and the two share a strange mental link. No talking needed. They understand each other instantly. The king keeps bowing and apologizing, insisting Zeke could have used his power to build a glorious future, yet he chose the family business instead. He finally owns up to his mistakes and admits that as the former king, he'll carry the weight of what happened before. Zeke answers that it's all in the past, forgiving him with kindness for every word of repentance. The king, overwhelmed by that forgiveness, bursts into tears, and pure relief floods his chest. He blurts out that it's finally over and it all turned out right, gripping Zeke tight as gratitude crashes over him, while Tiffany beams because this time, the story ends with a happy ending. One of the companions' muses wonders how the demon's cleansing might have twisted the king's heart, reshaping him from the inside. Zeke shuts it down fast, saying he'd never use force to force change anyone's consciousness, even if he could. She blurts out an apology for even daring to think something so horrific, and he steadies Chi-Chen by telling her he knows her heart is good. Then she turns around and apologizes to him. The heroes burst into laughter with pure relief, because deep down they know one thing. If a genuinely terrifying enemy shows up, they won't hesitate. They'll move fast and they'll crush it. Sakura strides up to them, whips around to Zeke, and fires off a direct message. She thanked them for rescuing their island from disaster and constant threats, and when Zeke grinned, he shrugged that it might have been an accident, but he was quick to admit that without their help, things could have turned deadly. He blurts it out with shaking honesty. This wasn't a random twist at all, but a bigger plan, or some destiny pulling the strings. Everyone around them buys the idea like it's destiny, saying their meeting was written in the stars, and Sakura can't help but blush, because Sia insists Zeke and Sakura's meeting is faithful, which somehow makes Sakura even more mortified. Chi-Chan shuts Shia up quick so she won't spill more than she should, and jealousy burns all over her face. Then Mint cuts in, grinning like, "It's finally over." She's already slipped into her beach clothes, and she's praying her brother finally gets a real vacation so he can finally crash and get some proper rest. She gently hopes they might finally get a moment to themselves, and the others are left completely stunned. While everyone scrambles, they realize Zeke is gone, and right away he catches Sakura stepping in, offering to lead him to a sacred place, gripping his hand tight as she promises she can take him to all the important spots because she's royal. The sister's heart drops. She spotted a terrifying rival, while the other girls sprint ahead, bickering furiously about what justice even means. All the characters are soaking up beach life, laughing and playing, when one of the girls bursts in with unstoppable energy, yelling that she's here at the sea at last, and you can feel the whole place light up with pure holiday joy and carefree party vibes. They kick back and trade vacation stories, and the girl in the swimsuit straight up tells them it's time to relax and soak it all in, while the others stare like, "Wait, did you just show up dressed like that?" She notices that only Mint gets ready for a vacation like this. Then T, Irina, and Sia come sprinting in, all wearing swimsuits, and the heroines beam as they soak in the stunning sea views and just let nature sweep them away. The girl with the ears grins and says she used magic to swap her clothes and reshape her whole look, and the others stare in awe, basically realizing how insanely convenient it is to have a sorceress on their team. Another heroine swears she can reshape clothes by tinkering with threads, Chi-Yi bristles at that, then shrugs it off and focuses on playing with the shells instead. The moment those threads wake up, they snap into action and wrap around Chi-chan, right as panic spikes in her chest, because she has no idea what's happening to her clothes. The dress shifts into something brand new, and now both girls end up looking exactly alike, awkward as it feels. The heroine grins anyway, grateful to her friend for the help, loving the final result. Meanwhile, Sakura, cradled in Zeke's arms, stared at the place's spiritual path and wild magical power, fuming with indignation as she soaked it all in. Jealousy sparks a tiny fight between the heroes. One heroine snaps at the other for always grabbing everything for herself. He calmly says it was all an accident, blaming the slippery ground, and she snaps back that he has absolutely no clue how women work. Sia suddenly felt this weird burst of power slam to a stop right in the middle of the road, and everyone's eyes snapped to her, hanging on her every word. So Irina stepped closer, voice cautious, and asked what it was and what she felt. They trudged toward a towering mountain, and right at the peak, a temple sat like a promise in the clouds. And Sakura leaned in to tell them it was a sacred shrine to the royal family's divine protector, where the trial waiting for them was none other than Peach's test. They stumbled up to a gigantic gate that practically buzzed with magic, and Irene blurted out whether regular folks could get in. Zeke told her that with an escort, anyone could enter, but the rules came with strings attached. Sakura made it crystal clear. Only Sia was allowed to pass the test, and nobody had the right to step in, not even Zeke and the others. They just had to watch, stay silent, and keep their nerves locked down. Right before they stepped into the sanctuary, Zeke pumped Sia up and promised she'd pull it off, and the others backed her with warm words and steady gestures. Sia clutched onto that support, gathering herself and going in with a fierce, unshakable resolve. They marched right up to the cave doorway before a colossal sacred altar, and Sakura shot everyone a stern look. "Stay quiet or you'll ruin the ritual." The air crackled with tense anticipation as the ceremony finally began. Sakura kicked off the ritual, clasping her hands in a prayer pose as a blazing vortex of magic spun around her, flashing wild bursts of light. Then she shouted her call, summoning Princess Peach to come to them. Energy spiraled through the sky, and a grand figure burst through the clouds. Princess Peach herself, riding up on a throne while mist swirled around her. Sia and Irene froze in awe, staring as the scene unfolded before them. Princess Peach scanned the crowd and realized the ceremony was still ages away. So she spun to Sakura and demanded to know why they'd come this early, her eyes cool, steady, and daring her to finally explain. Sakura bowed politely and said they'd come to ask for the princess's blessing. Then the rest of the ceremony crew filed in behind her, watching in tense silence as everyone waited, respectfully, for the princess's answer. The princess barges in, declaring she'll get to the bottom of this herself, and that confidence hits like a spark. Everyone goes deadly quiet, eyes locked on her, waiting for her call, while Zeke and the others lean in, hooked by every move. Princess Peach takes one look at the whole crowd, and for once, not one guest is rude, unlike all those other times. Princess Peach locks onto one impossible goal, winning over the Dragon Princess. Sia nods and proves Princess Peach right. This island's rare magic is the only fuel for her evolution, and King Elrond himself made sure they found it. Princess Peach blurts it out loud, because even if everyone keeps underestimating her, helping the dragon race would be a chance to prove herself, and honestly, it sounds like an honor she'd never pass up. The moment he hears that scary nature remark, the deity just smirks, agrees with it, and orders her to get ready for the test, while she's freaking out inside. The princess recalls the careful delicacies that always come with these rituals, and she can't help but wonder, are they ready yet? Sia pulls out those perfectly cooked rice balls, Princess Momo's all-time favorite, and Momo practically lights up with pure joy. Momo huffs in mock outrage that a single treat instantly drags her in, and her friends just laugh, because, yeah, this always happens. She admits she used to hand out ridiculous little chores with zero thought, but with a dragon kid on her hands, she had to be insanely careful. The princess flashes a dazzling smile, clocking every reaction around her, then blurts that she's got an idea. Meanwhile, Sia and her friends start sparring immediately over it. Sia's already an adult, not a kid, and they're totally ready for the test coming next. With just a flick of her hand, the princess hurls the unusual vessel into the sky like she's been waiting for this moment, all set and ready. Then she beams at Sia and her friends, bubbling with excitement as she can't wait to see what happens next. With a glass in her hand, the princess grins wide, calls everyone over, and tells them to drink together, playful and warm on the surface, but there's a sneaky test waiting for Sia behind that smile. Seal snaps her gaze to the princess, stunned by the sudden offer, and blurts out a question before she can even process it. Fear and confusion flicker in her eyes as she tries to figure out what kind of trap is coming next. The princess lays down the rules. If she's the first to collapse from the drink, she gets a win and magical powers. But if she's the one who wins, the real consequences are still a mystery. One of Sia's companion's objects is something the kids absolutely should never drink. And then one of them snaps at her to shut up, irritation blazing in their voice, while the princess stays perfectly stone-faced, still watching like nothing happened. The princess raises the glass and names it Peach Nectar of the Immortals, a relic so priceless she treasures it above everything else. Then she laughs off the worry, tells them it barely has any alcohol at all, and dares everyone to give it a sip. She takes a few quick sips, and with that, boom! A tiny explosion erupts, leaving everyone around her staring in shock. Chi-Chen blurts out that the drink tastes like poison, or straight-up gasoline, shocked by how brutally sharp it is, and the princess throws her head back laughing, loving every single reaction like it's the funniest thing in the world. Some of them try to describe that weird taste. Others barely notice it, while a few swear it's got bite and sharp edges. And then someone claims it all comes down to how much magic each person's body is holding. Princess Momo just smiles and says everything's right. Then Shia's magic vessel, so horribly weak, instantly overflows. Shia fumes at the spot, snapping back a pathetic vessel, wondering who Momo thinks that belongs to. Momo keeps that sly grin and plays innocent, asking sweetly if Shia thinks she lied. Sia refuses to quit, chugs her portion with relentless energy, and keeps demanding more, everyone's jaw on the floor at her stamina, and Momo can't help but stare, impressed by the sheer strength of her cradling. Right after the refill, Sia suddenly stiffens and starts to tremble, yet she swears she's fine, while realizing her mom's milk hits even harder now. Momo bursts into laughter, shocked that her drink could even be compared to dragon's milk, and she can't hide her pride because her treasure just got way more valuable. Someone blurts, "Wait, am I drinking alcohol or not?" Momo giggles and says the meaning got slightly twisted, then pushes the cup on everyone like, "Go on, take a sip." The crew sits by the fire soaking up the evening, and Momo wants to stay on the island a bit longer, turning the whole night even warmer, cozier, and way more homey. Some folks swear it was a perfect balance and a lovely evening, yet C is clearly not happy, and Sakura rushes in to apologize for what happened. The protagonist's jaw drops when he sees how wildly everyone reacts to the drink, and he can't even wrap his head around how something like that is actually drinkable. Zik stares at it like it's just water, but his younger sister laughs and swears it isn't. She says he's got a huge, full-to-the-brim kind of vessel, and the guy grins like, "Yep, that's her brother." Princess Momo lifts her chin and says it like it's a guarantee. If Zeke has a vessel like that, he's got special abilities, and she takes it seriously. Zeke is different because the power of the gods lives inside him, separating him from everyone else. Zeke freezes, stunned by the info, and blurts out in pure confusion, "How did you know, Momo?" The whole group turns to her at once, shocked out of their minds. The princess shrugs and says she clocked his weirdness instantly because a blazing divine aura practically screams from him, even from far away, while the heroes stare in confusion, trying to figure out what on earth that smell is supposed to mean. One girl laughs and jokes that Zeke smells good, wrapping her arms around him from behind, and the other one snaps instantly, furious, telling her to stop touching him without permission and not use the moment to get close. The princess snaps that it isn't only Zeke with that crushing aura. The Beast Princess has one too, and she's starting to doubt they even belong to this world, leaving everyone even more stunned. The Beast Princess snaps back at the doubts, blares that she's fine, she's got legs, she's alive. But her friend clocks it immediately. They're not even talking about what she thinks they are. Momo starts breaking it down. Divine power isn't just magic. It's a whole different beast, a deeper level entirely, and she's sure this problem runs way more complex than anyone thought. The princess steps in and tells him, even after he drinks it, there's still no magic surge. This is the proof, and it's crystal clear. Divine power crushes ordinary magic, then dissolves it like it never existed. Momo finally spills the truth. This entire party was basically a test, because to unlock power, you just had to drink a potion, and somehow the whole process ended up way more fun than anyone expected. If everyone caught wind of how to steal power, they'd swarm her, so she buried the potion's real truth and stayed one step ahead of the danger. Zeke finally puts the pieces together. Turns out he never took a hit because his divine essence has been shielding him the whole time. And now he gets why he's been invincible. Momo pushes on, saying it's not power for power's sake. More like, if the book's characters start messing around, why should anyone care? And she drives the point home again. This problem runs way deeper than people think. Momo grabs Zeke's attention and warns him that power like this can wreck a person from the inside out. She doesn't know where it came from, but she tells him to be careful anyway, because the cost could be way more than he's ready to pay. Sia grins and reminds Momo they've still got an unfinished competition on the table. Then Momo snaps to it, and Jack falls into a deep, silent spiral, replaying everything he heard just now. Zeke admits he already understood power could destroy people, but hearing it straight from someone else hits way harder. So he turns to Stefania and asks if she knows anything about destruction, and she flat out denies it. Zeke cracks a joke. Life would be way easier if power were used only for good, but deep down he knows it's never that clean, while Mint truly believes her brother only means well. The protagonist shrugs and says he'll figure it out once he's home, and Mint chips in that he'll swing by the library to study too. Meanwhile, Chi-chan just faceplants and falls asleep on the spot. Suddenly, Chi-chan pulls a face so weird it sends a jolt through everyone. Panic erupts, and her friends are bombarding her with frantic questions. Zeke's jaw drops. Did Chi-chan really force herself to drink? As she's struggling, she blurts out the truth. She just wanted to have fun like everyone else, even with everything going down on fair. Zeke leans in with real concern for Chi-chan, tells her to go breathe some fresh air, then quietly apologizes that everyone only chased the fun and never once thought about how she was doing. Chi-chan can't hold it in. She's trembling like crazy. Zeke grabs her shoulders to steady her, and she's totally lost, fighting tears as everything spills out. Soon, Chi-chan snaps, she throws up, and the whole room goes silent in shock. Sia panics with worry, and another girl tears into Chi-chan for what she's doing to her brother. Inside the Demon Lord Rouge's castle, Jamar stands frozen with raw nerves, like something terrifying is about to happen. He stammers his report to his master in the throne room, begging to explain the operation's newest collapse, and Rouge's face falls hard because, once again, there's still zero result. The demon tried to defend himself, saying Luce's power wasn't the issue at all. Zeke's power was so overwhelming that even a super magical being couldn't handle it. The Lord pulls him in close, tells him it's okay to mess up, and this time he gets forgiven. He just needs to try harder next round. The relieved demon bows with gratitude, practically bursting with joy at the mercy he never saw coming. But make no mistake, punishment still lands, at least on the surface, so the subordinates never dare to question how weak the authorities really are. The Demon Lord snaps a wicked hand gesture and unleashes a magical strike, and the demon's eyes widen in horror as he realizes he won't escape this without paying the price. A brutal surge of magic slams into the demon's chest, ripping a cry of pain from his throat as he finally realizes just how merciless the punishment is. Rouge hoists Jamar into the air, the old demon rasping out his last words with shaking breath as his body starts to crumble from the brutal energy, while Rouge, cold as stone, stares down with an open book, offering not an ounce of remorse. The demon's body is breaking down piece by piece, his face twisted in pure agony, yet he still strains to speak, begging for mercy. Rouge yanked her grip off the old demon, and he crashed to the ground, utterly still. No breath, no movement. She blinked with shock, called out his name, and watched his last brutal agony fade. Jamar's lifeless body lay there, and mild disbelief hit hard. How could something that small have killed him? He never saw it coming. Rouge barked an order, flinching at the dead silence, laid-back voice and all, telling them to take the body away. But nobody moved. Rouge watched it all happen in silence, and the truth hit her hard. Jamar was the last servant still standing, because every other one around him had already been wiped out. Rouge lets out a quiet sigh, then lays his long claws on the book's cover, stroking it like he's underlining just how serious his next move is. Rouge finally makes her move. She rises from her throne, stares down that bleak wasteland, and steps into the spotlight. The greatest cold villain is here at last, and the game just changed.